There is a hidden truth in chapter 6 of the book of Genesis that archaeologists and theologians have been trying to decipher for centuries. It is not a modern theory, nor is it a fictional tale. It is an event recorded consistently across 3 of humanity's oldest ancient sources. The Book of Enoch, a book removed from the canon, yet directly quoted by those closest to Jesus, describes a shocking event before the Great Flood. And those events align in a deeply unsettling way with some of the oldest legends humanity has ever preserved. Think about this. Civilizations that never knew one another, never traded with one another, and were separated by entire oceans. Why did they all describe the same kind of being, a creature in the form of a woman possessing supernatural beauty, and a voice capable of paralyzing the will of any man? The Greeks called them sirens. In West Africa, people trembled before Mami Wata. The Babylonians carved their images into temple walls. The Japanese wrote of Ningyo in texts that are over 1,000 years old. And the Slavs shuddered at the thought of the Rusalki. Why did all of them describe the same detail, the same power, and the same strange connection to water? The Bible and the Book of Enoch focus heavily on the male Nephilim, the violent giants who ravage the earth. But there is one question that most scholars ignore. If the fallen angels, the Watchers, took the daughters of men and fathered giant sons, then where did their daughters go? Who were they? These female Nephilim daughters who carried the blood of both heaven and earth. Could they be the true origin of all the seductive and haunting female entities found in global mythology? And why was their existence so terrifying that God had to send a great flood to erase every trace of them? Welcome to SleepCodex. Tonight, we will step beyond the boundary of what is permitted to be known and reach into one of the darkest chapters of the Book of Enoch, the true identity of the daughters of the Watchers, those whose beauty did not belong to this world. The origin of the Nephilim in the Book of Enoch. Before we go any deeper into these haunting and mesmerizing traditions, I want you to set aside everything you think you know. Let us face a single name together, a single word that has made scholars tremble for thousands of years: the Nephilim. In ancient Hebrew, Nephilim, spelled Nun-Pe Yod Lamed Yod Mem, comes from the root word nafal, which means to fall. But my friends, I must emphasize that in the minds of pre-Christian Jewish scholars, this name carried a far more chilling double meaning. They were not merely those who had fallen from heaven themselves. They were also the ones who cast others down. Their presence upon the earth was like a violent storm, cutting down every natural order that God had carefully established. Many Americans are used to reading the King James Version and seeing the word giants. But believe me, the Nephilim were not merely a matter of physical size. It was not that simple. This was a case of genetic corruption, a permanent stain upon the bloodline of humanity. The Book of Enoch says that this took place in the days of Jared, the 6th generation from Adam. And how strange it is that even the name Jared in Hebrew carries the meaning of descent, as though destiny itself had already marked this as the turning point that would usher in the darkest chapter of humanity's earliest dawn. At that time, mankind began to multiply, filling the earth with laughter and hope. The daughters of Adam's line grew in beauty, pure and radiant, like the first light of morning. But tragically, that very beauty became a snare for beings who had known nothing but the holy light of heaven. Who were they? They were the Watchers, beings forged from fire and light, entrusted with the high duty of guarding the order of creation. They were immortal. They were holy. They had never known pain, and they had never known desire. Their primary task was to protect us, the small and fragile human beings, personally formed by God in the beginning. But then, my friends, something unimaginable happened. A seed of lust began to grow in the very midst of heaven. From that unimaginable height, the eyes of angels, eyes that had once existed only to behold the glory of God, now turned downward. They saw the daughters of men, and they did not see beauty alone. They saw something heaven did not contain, the heat of flesh and blood. We all know that according to the order of creation, angels or divine beings cannot and should never feel lust toward human beings. In the eternal realm, only one reality exists: holy compassion. It is a glorious state where there is no place for the lower impulses of the flesh, no craving, and certainly no corrupt thought, not even for a moment. And yet, these watchers allowed such wicked and lustful thoughts to arise within themselves. Little by little, observation became desire, and desire became a frenzied urge to possess. At that moment, their leader Semyaza understood that he was about to commit a crime unlike anything that had ever existed before. He was too cunning to do it alone. He needed allies. He needed a bond that no one could ever break. And so, 200 Watchers commanders of the heavenly host descended together and gathered upon the summit of Mount Hermon. Why Hermon? In Hebrew, Hermon shares its root with Haram, meaning curse or utter destruction. Even the name of the mountain itself foretold a future with no escape. There, in the bone-deep cold of the highest peak, all creation seemed to hold its breath. The order of the universe was about to be torn apart. In that dreadful silence, Semyaza slowly looked across the faces that had once reflected the radiance of God and now burned only with desire. He knew that once the words were spoken, the road back to heaven would be shut forever. Semyaza, with the cunning intelligence of a heavenly being, cast out a test meant to lock the fate of all of them in place. He spoke, his voice echoing like thunder through the stillness. I fear that you will not actually agree to carry out this deed, and that I alone will have to pay the penalty for so great a sin. He was using fear to force them into a circle of no return. He was turning individual sin into a collective fate. What he was really saying was, if we do this, then we go to hell together. And listen carefully, my friends, because the response of those 200 watchers is what should truly make us shudder. Not one of them stepped back. Not one of them spoke a word of restraint. In the madness of desire, all 200 of those mighty beings answered with one voice and swore an oath so terrible that even hell itself would tremble at it. Let us all swear an oath and bind ourselves together by mutual imprecations that none of us shall abandon this plan, but that we shall carry it out to the very end. Do you understand the weight of the phrase, mutual imprecations? In the ancient world, this was the highest possible form of spiritual binding. They were not merely making a promise. They were placing a curse upon themselves. They were saying to the Creator, if I betray this oath, let my existence be blotted out. Let my light become everlasting darkness. Let me be condemned forever. And so it was. These 200 beings betrayed God, and the only thing waiting for them below was everlasting destruction. Forbidden unions and the birth of the Nephilim. When the oath at Mount Hermon echoed between heaven and earth, the Watchers understood that they had signed the death sentence of their own souls. There was no turning back. One by one, those majestic angels, originally created by God to bring light to humanity, cast off their glorious wings and descended into the dust of the earthly world. They no longer kept themselves in purity. They began choosing for themselves the daughters of men, fragile beings, who carried the radiance of flesh with eyes, smiles, and warmth that the eternal realm of heaven had never known. And then the forbidden unions began. My friends, let us look directly at this truth. This was no longer pure love, but toxic possession. It was no longer mercy, but frenzied lust and defiance of the law of the Almighty. Oh, the sheer shame of it. How sinful and disgraceful it was that holy beings would plunge themselves into the filth of desire. From those twisted unions, a monstrous race was born, the Nephilim. They were neither angels nor human beings. They were aberrations within creation itself. They stood as tall as towers and were so powerful that even the mountains seemed to tremble beneath their footsteps. But alas, along with that unmatched strength came a bottomless greed. The book of Enoch, chapter 7, records words that leave us stunned into silence. And those women became pregnant and gave birth to giants whose height was 3,000 cubits. They devoured all the labor of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. Can you imagine that horror? The Nephilim consumed the entire food supply of humanity. When the fields were exhausted, they turned and tore apart the livestock. And when even the animals were no longer enough to fill their endless hunger, they began hunting human beings themselves. Their image rises before us like the most bloodthirsty predators. Imaginable eyes glowing red, like the fires of hell, hands tipped with razor-sharp claws, and roars so terrifying that children screamed in nightmares, while grown men collapsed in utter despair. At that time, humanity lived in constant fear. People hid in caves, fled from their fields, and survived each day in unbearable anxiety. Because at any moment, those giant shadows could appear, crush their homes beneath their feet, and devour the people they loved. Chapter 6, verse 4 of Genesis preserves that terror in a brief but haunting line. In those days there were giants on the earth, mighty men of old men of renown. Make no mistake, this was the dreadful consequence of forbidden love. Once angels had fallen, their radiance no longer carried the light of salvation. It became a flame of destruction, burning away every hope left on the earth. When we reflect on it, human love can be beautiful, but it still carries selfishness within it. We love those close to us. We choose the ones nearest to us. We make distinctions between who is lovable and who is not. But angels were meant to rise above personal attachment and dwell in the realm of holy compassion. Only compassion can embrace without choosing, without condition. Look at Jesus when he came down to earth. He did not distinguish between a prostitute and an ordinary citizen, between the rich and the poor. He looked only at the human heart and at the moral condition of the soul. That is true divinity. And so, when the watchers abandoned compassion and ran after earthly desire, they lost their divine nature and turned themselves into the most hateful rebels imaginable. From that rebellion, the earth was drowned in blood and tears. Humanity cried out, and heaven and earth shook. And the poison did not stop there. The descendants of those fallen angels also sought to draw mankind over to their side, corrupting human minds and slowly turning humanity toward evil, farther and farther away from the loving embrace of Almighty God. Everything seems painfully clear now, doesn't it, my friends? An invasion of violence and ruthless destruction. But look again just once more. Something is wrong with the larger picture. We hear about the male giants, the bloodthirsty warriors, the ones who ravaged the fields and crushed everything in their path. But if the Watchers took the daughters of men and fathered sons, then where are their daughters? Could the laws of heaven produce only males? Or is it possible that in the darkness of history, the presence of the female Nephilim was deliberately concealed because they carried a power even more terrifying than brute violence itself? Chapter 19 of the book of Enoch may help us answer that question. The truth about the female Nephilim, the daughters of the Watchers. My friends, we have become very familiar with the violent male giants, the ones who ravaged the earth before the flood. But there is one question we often ignore. Where did the female descendants of the fallen angels go? To answer that, we must turn to a brief but shocking line in the book of Enoch, chapter 19, a passage that describes the fate of the women who joined themselves to the Watchers. And the wives of those erring angels shall become sirens. I know what you are thinking. The book of Enoch is not part of the official biblical canon, so can it really be trusted? This is exactly where we must look at the Epistle of Jude, an undeniable part of the New Testament. Jude, the brother of Jesus, directly quoted the book of Enoch to affirm the judgment that fell upon the angels who abandoned their proper place. That tells us the earliest believers regarded Enoch as a serious source, one that preserved details Genesis left out. And especially when we place these three pieces together: Genesis, which speaks of the hybrid unions; the book of Enoch, which speaks of transformation into sirens; and the Epistle of Jude, which supports the reality of those events, a horrifying picture begins to emerge. It opens a setting that archaeologists and scholars have struggled for decades to explain. Why did ancient civilizations that never knew one another all describe the same destructive supernatural female being with such precision? We are speaking of specific details that repeat consistently, not minor variations or superficial coincidences. The same form, the same power, the same connection to water, the same effect on the men who approach them. The Greeks called them sirens. The West Africans called them mamiwata. The Babylonians carved them into their temples. The Slavs feared them under the name Rusalki. The Japanese wrote about Ningyo in texts more than 1,000 years old. All of them describe the same kind of being, half woman, half something that did not belong to this world. A supernatural beauty joined to a voice capable of nullifying the will of any grown man. They were always tied to water, always dangerous, and always remembered with a mixture of terror and fascination. Why are they all the same? Why did people separated by oceans and by thousands of years all paint the same portrait in such specific detail? On one hand, people may shrug and say it is all just coincidence, a product of collective psychology or universal patterns in the human mind. But on the other hand, and this is the possibility that should keep us awake at night, what if all of those cultures were preserving the echo of a real event? An event so powerful that it shook the very order of creation and forced God Himself to erase every trace of it from the face of the earth. My friends, this is not a side note or an obscure passage. This is the very background that gives the Great Flood a meaning far beyond ordinary moral lessons. That is exactly what Genesis chapter 6 is trying to tell us. Most readers move quickly past it. But if you open the first 4 verses of that chapter, you will notice that something feels wrong, a missing piece that does not fit the rest of the text. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old men of renown. Again, most readers move quickly past it. But if you open the first 4 verses of this chapter, you will see that something is not right. A piece that seems not to fit the rest of the text. The Bible does not begin Noah's story with the ark or the flood. It mentions a dark reality that happened beforehand, as though the reader was already expected to know it. The text does not say men married women. It clearly distinguishes between the sons of God and the daughters of men. this is not a metaphor, my friends. In ancient Hebrew, the phrase B'nai Elohim, sons of God, is consistently used for heavenly beings, for angels. Then, verse 4, there were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old men of renown. One of the most debated lines in all of history confirms that giants appeared on the earth in those days. And they were the result of an unnatural genetic crossing. The phrase, and also after that, is extremely valuable here. It shows that this corruption did not happen only once before the flood. Somehow it found a way to return to the earth again. Stop right there. Every word in this passage carries the weight of 1,000-pound stone, sons of God. Daughters of men giants, mighty men of renown. Who exactly were these beings? That question has divided scholars for centuries. But when we look back at the oldest interpretations from Jewish rabbis and the earliest church fathers, everything points in one astonishingly clear direction. They identified those sons of God as angels, who rebelled against their proper place and descended to the earth. Believe me, that interpretation is neither new nor marginal. It was once the dominant belief, and the New Testament itself directly supports it in the Epistle of Jude, where it describes angels who abandoned their proper dwelling and were bound in everlasting chains. Genesis gives us only the headline, but the book of Enoch, written by Noah's ancestor, is the report that fills in the details Genesis intentionally leaves out. Enoch describes with extraordinary precision 200 angelic beings, the ones called the Watchers, descending onto Mount Hermon. Before committing their blasphemous act, they formed a collective covenant of rebellion, a mutual oath so that no one could withdraw. From those forbidden unions between heaven and earth, a terrifying bloodline was born. Their children grew with size and power beyond nature. They devoured the earth's resources, and when the food was gone, they turned and hunted mankind itself. Think about that for a second. This was total corruption, with no exception so great that the Lord himself saw the wickedness of man had become overwhelming. But my friends, here is the question most teachers never dare to say out loud. If the Watchers fathered giant sons, then they surely fathered daughters as well. So where did they go? Genesis and Enoch focus all their attention on the male Nephilim. But the silence surrounding the female Nephilim is the very red thread connecting the Bible to the mysterious legends of the whole world. God chose to send the great flood to cleanse the entire earth. Noah was spared not only because of his virtue, but because his bloodline was perfect, meaning it had not been contaminated by Nephilim DNA. The floodwaters swept everything away. Or did they? This is where the door opens to a staggering truth. Water can destroy everything that walks on land, but water does not destroy what already lives in the water. The flood did not touch the deepest abysses of the ocean. The book of Enoch, chapter 7, also says that the corruption did not stop with human beings, but spread into birds, reptiles, and fish as well. There was a widespread mixing that affected the entire natural world. And here's the turning point. While the male Nephilim possessed brute strength to destroy the female, Nephilim carried the power of enchantment. The same kind of power their ancestors, the Watchers, used to disrupt the order of creation. And the pattern is chilling. The male Watchers were drawn to the beauty of human women. They descended from heaven to seize them and corrupt the earth. So then, could there have been a dark reversal in their female bloodline? These female Nephilim, carrying the genetic code of beings not of this world, rose up from the water. They did not use swords or spears. They used supernatural beauty and voices powerful enough to nullify human will, luring men down into the depths, just as their fathers once did to women in the ancient world. This was not coincidence. It was a genetic hunting mechanism. But I know that right now a deep skepticism is rising in your mind. You may be asking yourself, this all sounds insane. How could creatures like giants or mermaids possibly exist in real life? Yes, I understand that feeling. We have been taught that these are only fables for children. But what if I told you that their physical traces may still be hidden in the earth and beneath the deepest oceans? What if the giant skeletons allegedly hidden away by museums and the terrifying encounters reported in the deep sea were not products of imagination, but classified records never meant to be made public? Take a deep breath, because what comes next will carry us beyond ancient texts and into evidence that cannot easily be denied. Together, we are about to confront the question, could giants and those siren beings still truly exist among us? First, let us go deeper into the evidence. The evidence that points to the existence of Merpeople on this earth. The myth and reality of Merpeople. In the West, from ancient times until now, people have always passed down stories about the existence of Merpeople. But did they truly exist, or were they merely the product of seasick visions upon the vast ocean? I know that in today's digital age, with the advancement of filming and photography technology, we have seen no shortage of fleeting images of Merpeople from around the world. But the line between what is real and what is false remains so thin that it is almost impossible to distinguish. So do Merpeople truly exist? My answer from the standpoint of deep reflection is yes. And the truth about them is even more astonishing than any Hollywood film you have ever seen. Let us travel back through time to approximately 23,000 years ago to the region of the Atlantic Ocean, where a special race once ruled the seas, the Merpeople. This was an age when the Earth displayed a strange biological diversity, when giants average-sized humans and tiny humans coexisted. While we, the average-sized humans, dominated the continents with highly advanced science and technology in Europe and a flourishing Mayan civilization in North America, beneath the deep waters surrounding the white continent, tribes of Merpeople multiplied and built an empire of their own. As for their appearance in reality, Merpeople were not the beautiful blonde girls from fairy tales that you may have seen. They were a unique life form with a bodily structure so astonishing that it would leave biologists in awe. And they existed in two distinct aquatic species. One type had a human upper body and a fish lower body, while another had the upper half of a fish but sturdy human legs below. They stood as tall as 2.5 meters, roughly the height of smaller Nephilim, with shimmering gray-white skin, like moonlight beneath the water light brown hair and deep dark blue eyes. Most remarkable of all creation had granted them both gills and lungs, allowing them to come onto land and breathe air for 2 to 3 hours, a perfect adaptation that we ourselves can only dream of. Within their society, the division of power was very clear. While the men could weigh as much as 500 kilograms and represented raw physical strength, the women leaned toward magical ability, possessing extraordinary powers and lifespans that could exceed 300 years. They lived together in tribes, used seaweed and algae as food, and sometimes organized hunts of whales and smaller sharks in order to maintain ecological balance under the summons of the Mer King according to the rhythm of the tides. Even more astonishing was their spiritual life. The Merpeople worshipped the god of the sea inside the palaces of prehistoric civilizations that had sunk deep beneath the ocean floor tens of thousands of years ago. Within those solemn sanctuaries, incantations written in hieroglyphs and stone tablets dedicated to Merpeople who had attained spiritual cultivation still remained. The light inside those palaces did not come from electricity, but from a special kind of magnesium stone illuminated by magic, producing an undying blue-white flame in the heart of the water, blazing brilliantly through countless millennia. Yet the splendor of those undying magnesium flames in their temples did not remain only a private memory of the Merpeople. It seeped into the deeper layers of human culture over thousands of years. If you study American culture in particular, and Western culture in general, from the cold shores of Northern Europe to the sunlit Mediterranean, the oldest legends all converge without fail on one single image: mermaids of enchanting beauty with graceful fishtails below the waist, often appearing half revealed upon the water's surface and sitting beneath the moonlight as they comb their flowing hair. Look at the work Vanity Fair by William Thackeray, where the image of the mermaid is portrayed as a symbol of irresistible allure. But do not be mistaken, this is not merely literary fiction. The ancient Babylonians, masters of astronomy and mathematics, worshipped the sea god Poseidon, and especially Erythrian, a being who rose from the depths of the ocean to teach humanity the highest forms of art and science. Even the Syrians and the people of Felix were no exception, for they too worshipped mermaids as powerful moon deities. I want you to pay close attention to an extremely important historical witness, Gaius Plinius Secundus, a respected scholar in the 1st century after Christ. In his masterpiece Natural History, he declared in unmistakable terms, "As for mermaids, also called Nereids, this is not too difficult to believe. They truly do exist, although their bodies are rough and covered entirely with scales." Pliny's statement shows that Merpeople were not the product of dreamy imagination, but flesh and blood beings with rough protective scales, a detail that aligns completely with what we have just uncovered about their bodily structure. If you ever have the chance to visit the Louvre Museum, stop and look closely at the ancient carved mural depicting the sea god named Oan. It is physical evidence that cannot be denied: a being with a powerful fishtail, yet with the upper half in the form of a majestic man. And of course, we cannot fail to mention the sirens, that haunting name for merpeople in Greek culture. They were the ones who used supernatural song to enchant sailors, a kind of music so wondrous that it could strip away the reason of even the most clear-minded men, causing ships to crash violently against hidden reefs in a trance-like stupor. These accounts in Greek mythology were not merely tales told by the fireside. They were warnings about the overwhelming power of hybrid beings who carried within them the blood of heaven and the abyss. So then, when all the pieces from Babylon, from Greece, and from modern museums all point toward the same shared reality, do we still dare call it legend? Or are these in fact the surviving records of a race that once ruled this planet before humanity rose to dominance? Moving beyond the boundaries of fiction and legend, we even have accounts believed to be true, told by sailors and coastal residents themselves, hundreds of years ago. The first time merpeople stepped out of misty tales and appeared before ordinary human eyes was in the year 1403. After floodwaters receded in haste, a merperson was left stranded on the shore of Eton in the Netherlands and was later found by a group of fishermen. According to the book Speculum Mundi, published in the year 1635 and written personally by the English minister John Swan, about this event, the mermaid seemed to adapt quickly to life on land. She liked wearing beautiful clothes, enjoyed going for walks, and listened to noble women pour out their hearts. Yet she never once opened her lips to speak a single word. In the year 1493, off the coast of Hispaniola, the explorer Christopher Columbus saw 3 mermaids leaping high out of the sea. Later, Captain Columbus, the world-famous navigator, known for discovering the Americas, wrote in his journal that during his voyage toward Rio del Oro, he saw 3 merpeople rising from the depths of the sea. The explorer Henry Hudson recorded in his journal an incident that took place on the 15th day of June in the year 1608, while sailing through the Bering Sea out of Norway. This morning, one of our company, looking over the side, saw a mermaid and called some of the others to come and see. Another man came, and at that moment she came close to the ship's side and looked earnestly at these men. Soon after, a wave came and carried her away. From the navel upward, her back and breasts were like a woman's as they saw her. Her body was as large as one of us. Her skin was very white, and her long black hair hung down behind her back. When she dived beneath the water, they saw her tail, which was like the tail of a porpoise and speckled like a mackerel. The names of the men who saw her were Thomas Hills and Robert Rainey. Another mermaid encounter was once treated as a true account in the book Incredible Mysteries and Legends of the Ocean by Edward Snow. A captain described his own encounter off the coast of Newfoundland in the year 1614. In these words, Captain John Smith saw a mermaid swimming near with a beauty difficult to describe. He saw this creature with large eyes, a straight nose that was somewhat short, and a pair of long ears. Smith also said that her long green hair gave the mermaid a striking charm. Before such beauty, Smith himself even felt a moment of stirring emotion as he gazed at the woman before suddenly realizing that below the waist, her body belonged to a fish. But my friend's Captain Smith's moment of fascination was not an isolated case. These encounters appear so frequently in the maritime journals of earlier centuries that even government officials and men of the highest rank in society could no longer ignore them. They did not merely see these beings, but in a few rare cases they actually laid hands on them. Proof of that appears in the book Adventures in Unhistory, which tells the story that in the year 1600, 1902 Norwegian senators Ulf Rosenspare and Christian Hall captured a merperson and later released it back into the open sea. The matter became even more dramatic when the established press began to take notice. In the year 1738, a daily newspaper in London published a shocking image of a small mermaid who had been stoned to death by the people of the Hebrides, who believed she was a monstrous deformity. The entire village, from the old to the young, was willing to swear before God that the story was 100% true. They buried the unfortunate mermaid carefully, as though in late repentance, before a supernatural life they had failed to understand. Today, physical evidence is still said to remain in the form of mummies and fossils, challenging every scientific prejudice. Some scientists claim that merpeople were real, and even argue that marine environmental pollution and reckless exploitation of sea resources caused their extinction. At Enjuin Temple in the city of Asakuchi, Okayama Prefecture, Japan, there is a preserved mermaid mummy, a small specimen measuring only about 30 centimeters in length with a human upper body and a fish lower body. According to the temple's caretaker, this mermaid mummy dates back to approximately the years 1736 through 1741. The mummy has a head with a human-like face and clearly visible teeth, along with 2 hands, each hand bearing 5 fingers. Beside the mummy lies a letter revealing its origin. It was likely written by its former owner, the man who bought it before it was brought to Enjuin Temple. The letter says, a merperson was caught in a fishing net in Kochi Prefecture. The fishermen who caught it did not know it was a merperson. They brought it to Osaka Prefecture and sold it as a strange fish. My ancestor purchased it and kept it as a treasured family heirloom. But my friends, those silent specimens resting in Eastern temples, are not the only testimony. Halfway across the globe, along the mist-covered shores of the United Kingdom, similar reports also began appearing in the most respected newspapers of the time. These were no longer secret family letters, but public declarations made before the whole world by educated and reputable men. One striking example is found in the esteemed Times of London. which on the 8th day of September in the year 1809, published a letter from schoolmaster William Monroe, who was teaching at a school in Scotland, addressed to Dr. Torrance in Glasgow. The letter read as follows. About 12 years ago, when I was headmaster of a parish school in Ray while walking to the shore at Sandside Bay on a warm summer day, for some reason I felt inclined to continue on foot towards Sandside Head, and there I came upon what appeared to be a naked woman sitting upon a rock in the sea and combing long hair that fell upon her shoulders and was of a light brown color. It truly resembled a human being, so closely that had it not been sitting upon that rock in a place too dangerous for bathing, I would have believed it to be a person, and anyone unaccustomed to such a sight would surely have thought the same. Its head was covered with hair of the color already mentioned and shining on the crown. Its forehead was round, its face full. Its cheeks were rosy, its eyes blue, its mouth and lips naturally formed, much like those of a man. Its teeth could not be seen because its mouth was closed. Its breasts, abdomen, arms, and fingers were of moderate size, and I saw no webbing, though I cannot say so with complete certainty. It remained seated upon that rock for 3 or 4 minutes after I first observed it combing its hair, which was long and thick and seemed to be a source of pride to it. And then it plunged into the sea up to the middle, after which it was seen no more. I saw it very clearly. The mound from which I observed it was not far away, and the bright sun was shining. Just before it leaped into the water, it seemed to notice me, for its eyes looked directly toward the mound on which I stood. It should perhaps be added that before I saw the creature myself, I had often heard a number of people whose honesty was beyond question say that they had seen the same phenomenon I have now described, though at that time, like others, I was not inclined to credit their testimony on the subject. I can say one thing with certainty. It was only because I saw this phenomenon with my own eyes that I became fully convinced of the existence of Merpeople. If the above account may be of any use in helping establish the existence of a phenomenon which until now has seemed almost unbelievable to natural philosophers, or in removing the skepticism of others who are ready to reject whatever they cannot fully understand, then you may make whatever use of it you wish. Yours sincerely, William Monroe. As you can see, William Monroe's heartfelt lines were not merely a personal reflection. They were a direct challenge to the skepticism of the scientific world of his day. He placed the honor of a schoolmaster on the line in defense of what his own eyes had seen. But my friends, remember this. William Monroe was not the last man to step into the light and bear witness. As time passed, reports of this being did not diminish. On the contrary, they began appearing in even more distant seas with descriptions more detailed and stranger than ever before, challenging every biological law we thought we understood. Proof of that continuing pattern appeared more than a century later, on the 24th day of August in the year 1980, when the Torch News of Kuwait published a report about the discovery of a merperson in the Red Sea, with the upper body resembling a fish and the lower body resembling a human being, complete with 2 long legs and all 10 toes. Yes, my friends, you did not hear that wrong. That bizarre detail of 10 toes completely shatters the gentle little mermaid image from Andersen's fairy tale. Yet it aligns in a startling way with the hybrid beings we decoded earlier. And just when the world had not yet recovered from the reports out of the Red Sea, another decade later, a different door opened at the very heart of some of Eastern Europe's most secretive archaeological digs. In the year 1990, a Soviet archaeologist named Jeremiah revealed to Western media that while construction work was underway, a group of laborers discovered a treasure-filled tomb near the Black Sea coast in the city of Sochi, Russia. They were stunned to find within it a merperson with a fish tail, measuring 1.73 meters in length. After study, scientists concluded that this merperson had died at approximately 100 years of age. Think about that, a tomb. A formal burial for a sea being. That suggests they were not merely animals, but conscious lives with culture and perhaps even status in the ancient world. But if you think a 100-year-old skeleton is the limit, then prepare yourself for the final piece of evidence, a fossil that carries us all the way back to the dawn of human civilization, thousands of years after the Great Flood. On the 21st day of May in the year 1991, the American newspaper Weekly World Report published an article under the headline, "Amazing Creature Dominated the Seas. 12,000 years ago, mermaid fossil found." This report did not arise from rumor, but from limestone formations that surfaced along the Yugoslav coast near the city of Šibenik. There, its perfectly preserved remains came to light with a mouth containing a strong jaw and teeth sharp as razors. Dr. J. Patrick O'Connor, a seasoned archaeologist from California who worked directly at the site, said, "This creature was female and likely swam in the ocean about 12,000 years ago. She died in an underwater landslide, was encased in limestone, and gradually became fossilized." Dr. O'Connor described this fossil measuring 1.6 meters in length in terms that send a chill down the spine. From the waist upward, it had a human form with two rather strong arms and a large, normally developed head. But my friends, here is the detail that makes us think immediately of the female Nephilim. From those two hands extended sharp claws, and its eyes had no eyelids, cold and fish-like. Claws for hunting teeth, sharp as razors for tearing flesh. This is not the mermaid of your dreams. This is the image of a supernatural predator from the abyss, a creature carrying in itself the bloodline of the fallen watchers. All of this evidence, from exploration journals to letters from scholars to ancient fossils, is crying out one truth: that the modern world is deliberately trying to ignore. We are not alone on this planet. Merpeople giants. They are fragments left over from a world before the flood, an age when the line between the divine and the demonic had been erased. Perhaps, as some scientists have claimed, pollution and reckless exploitation drove them slowly into extinction or forced them to retreat deeper into the fractures of the ocean. But the memory of them will remain forever as the strongest warning of what happens when the heavenly order is violated. What do you think? Should we continue digging into these forbidden archives in search of the final truth? Leave your comment, because the truth usually lies in the deepest place. But my friends, remember this: the ocean is not the only place hiding the flawed fragments of creation. When we lift our eyes toward the high mountains or dig deep into the caves of the continents, another truth awaits us there, one even more horrifying and more tangible than that. It is a truth that museums have tried to bury and textbooks have erased from our memory. If the song of the female Nephilim in the abyss makes you shudder, then the footprints of those who ruled the land will leave you frozen in silence. We are no longer talking about theories or faint fossils. We are talking about flesh and blood skeletal remains so immense that they defy every law of biology, creatures whose very existence would collapse the entire foundation of modern history. Why were scientists so stunned when they came face to face with these mass burial pits? And more importantly, why have the most powerful governments in the world worked so hard to keep them hidden for centuries? Fasten your seatbelts, because we are about to step into a case file even darker than before. The legendary giants were real, and this is why both the government and the church wanted to keep them buried. I know for certain that at this point, quite a few of you, especially the practical men who only believe what they can see and hear for themselves, are giving a skeptical little smirk. You are telling yourselves, come on now. Giants are nothing more than products of imagination, bedtime fairy tales for children. I understand that because I once stood exactly where you are standing now. But my friends, after spending years turning over hundreds of ancient documents, reading books, until they wore thin and cross-checking long-forgotten records, I can stand here with confidence and tell you something as certain as iron giants truly did once exist on this planet. We are not talking about fantasy tales. We are talking about a biological reality. For more than a century, the most serious researchers have gathered one piece of evidence after another from every corner of the world, and the picture that emerges is enough to leave anyone speechless. Humanity was never alone. There was once an age when the Earth was home to 3 human races of completely different sizes. A majestic race of giants, an average-sized race like ourselves today, and even hidden tribes of tiny people. Listen to the words of the renowned Africanist B. Davidson, who recorded what he saw and heard about this extraordinary race in his field notes. My friends, these descriptions will take your breath away. With only one arm, they could block an entire river. Their voices carried so far that they could echo from one village to another like rolling thunder. When a giant coughed, the birds in the forest scattered in every direction as though a terrible storm had just arrived. They could walk hundreds of kilometers in a single day, and carrying home an elephant or a hippopotamus they had just hunted was, to them, as effortless as our carrying a bag of groceries. But my friends, this truth is not limited to the African continent. If we cross the ocean and come to the land of the Aztecs, you will find a historical treasure carefully preserved in the Vatican Library under the name Codex Vaticanus. That priceless document records in detail a shocking truth. There were once as many as 4 different generations of giants upon the earth. They were not purely human. They were a special race carrying mixed blood, part human and part divine beings. They were courageous, extraordinary, and possessed powers that no army of mortal men could stand against. Can you believe that? It was only after these mighty beings disappeared that human beings in the form we know today, truly began to rule the world. Even the brilliant German scholar Alexander von Humboldt, while studying the manuscript of the Dominican priest Pedro de los Rios, uncovered another haunting detail about their final days. When the great flood drowned the entire world in the fury of the waters, only 7 giants remained, managing to survive by hiding in deep caves. And it was these final survivors who used their godlike strength to build artificial mountains in the form of pyramid structures, whose stone transport methods modern science still cannot explain, all in memory of the sacred Mount Tlaloc, the place that had once sheltered them and their people through the catastrophe. And my friends, here is the final detail that truly sent a chill down my spine. The descriptions from the Aztecs, from Africa, and from German scholars all align in a strange and astonishing way, accurate down to the smallest detail, with what was recorded in the Book of Enoch, where for the first time in human history, the haunting name Nephilim officially appears. More than 60 years ago, in the dry caves of Qumran, along the shore of the Dead Sea, more than 900 ancient manuscripts were discovered, the collection now known as the Dead Sea Scrolls. But among those familiar religious writings, scientists were truly stunned when they laid hands on an unusual scroll, a document that offered direct clues about the downfall of the Nephilim. That text was the Book of Giants. My friends, let me tell you about the true power of these beings. According to ancient tradition, the Nephilim possessed not only immense physical strength, but also spiritual abilities far beyond our imagination. They could levitate control minds from a distance and even foresee the future. with extraordinary intelligence in science, architecture, and engineering. They combined those mystical powers to build the pyramids and the great monuments we still see today. They created a glorious age for themselves. But my friends, absolute power always comes with absolute corruption. The book of Enoch says that they began drinking blood, teaching mankind the arts of abortion and spreading depravity across the earth. That was the moment when the divine beings decided judgment had to begin. In the book of Giants, the picture of their final days is truly bleak. When God created a new humanity, the first sons of God, this race of giants had already fallen into serious decline. Their civilization had become nothing more than fragments after repeated punishments from heaven. And do you know something? Even though they were enormous and powerful in their final wars against mankind, those giants seemed to know their fate in advance. They could feel the breath of destruction drawing near. The drama reached its peak when Maweh, the son of the angel Barakel, together with Ohia and Hahia, the sons of the fallen leader Shemyazah, all dreamed prophetic dreams about a great flood that would wipe everything away. In despair, they sent Maweh on a journey through the heavens to seek out their forefather Enoch, the only one who could speak with God. The text describes Maweh as having flown with wings like an eagle to find Enoch. But alas, the answer they received was only a stern message from heaven. You will not escape judgment for what you have done. The earth had cried out and complained of their corruption, and the angel Raphael stood ready to open the fountains of the deep. The great flood then swept them all away, completely erasing the giants from the face of the earth. And yet history still preserves traces that cannot be denied. In the year 1900, 56 large-scale excavations at Qumran brought to light manuscripts written on parchment and copper, dating from before Christ, proving how seriously the ancient world recorded these beings who were said to stand as tall as 5 meters. I am certain you would be left speechless, just like the head of that excavation team, when he saw with his own eyes the giant skeletons found near the ruins of megalithic civilizations. Even verse 4 in chapter 6 of Genesis hints at a strange detail that these giants were appointed to the depths of the earth and were not permitted to appear freely once modern humanity began moving into a new civilization. And yet the memory of them still lives on in the legends of the indigenous people of Ecuador. They said their ancestors once fought giants who came from the sea giants, who were finally destroyed by fire from the sky. In the year 1543, when Spanish explorers first heard about this tribe of giants, they laughed and dismissed it as fantasy. But my friends, today, the attitude of the scientific world is changing. With evidence found all across the world and careful research carried out over many decades, we are now forced to admit one truth. This world has never belonged to us alone. The giants, the Nephilim, were here. They built, they fell, and their traces are still waiting for those courageous enough to see through the veil of hidden history. The legend of the giants in Ecuador and the unusual archaeological discoveries. As we continue this journey of discovery, let us return to the Puerto Viejo Valley, where the indigenous accounts of a relentless pursuit that caused the giants to disappear forever drove Juan de Olmos, a lieutenant at Puerto Viejo, to order large-scale excavations. The results of that digging left the Spanish soldiers trembling. They found enormous rib bones, bones from body parts so large they seemed absurd, and teeth of unimaginable size. But even more astonishing, they also discovered strange traces of lightning carved deeply into the rocks at that site, evidence of a destructive event that seemed to have come from heaven itself. By the year 1553, the historian Pedro Cieza de León published a shocking report about the giants of Guayaquil. Based on stories passed down from the ancestors of the indigenous people, he recorded a terrifying portrait The natives say, from what they heard from their forefathers, that these men came from the sea on large vessels. They were so tall that the height of an ordinary man did not reach their knees, and naturally, their limbs were proportionally large as well. They were truly giants, with long hair hanging down over their shoulders. In his account, Pedro Chiesa de Leon also emphasized that these giant men wore clothing made of animal hides, had no beards, and most notably, they came without women. Let us pause there for a moment and think this through. Descriptions of long hair, towering stature, and animal skin clothing have led many modern researchers to ask, could these have been Vikings, Norsemen? We know that Vikings did reach North America, but there is no historical record showing that they ever traveled as far as Ecuador or settled there with a size so gigantic as to fit these descriptions. According to Pedro Chiesa de Leon, these giant men built a village and lived by hunting and gathering. But they suffered from a genetic tragedy. They could neither marry nor continue their bloodline because no women on Earth were large enough to be suitable mates for them. Conflicts between the natives and the giants occurred regularly. And of course, the smaller indigenous people were always at a disadvantage against the overwhelming force of those giant men. And then that nightmare came to an end through what sounded like a terrible miracle. Chiesa wrote that according to ancient tradition, an angel came down with a fire from heaven and wiped out the giants in a single moment. Then again, an earth-shaking event brought that nightmare to its close. Chiesa recorded that according to the testimony of the elders, an angel descended with a fire from heaven and swept away the giants in an instant. From the viewpoint of modern scholars, this sounds more like a description of a cosmic object. Perhaps an unusually large meteor shower blazing down in a magnificent display, or massive lightning strikes with such terrifying energy that they completely destroyed the tribe. And the strange parallels do not stop there. Thousands of miles from Ecuador, indigenous peoples in Mississippi also preserved an ancient and compelling tradition that their ancestors emerged from Naniwaya Mound and encountered a race of giant white men with blonde hair. These men also wore heavy animal skin clothing, carried weapons such as battle axes, and came inland from the sea with extreme violence. Could it be that the indigenous peoples of Guayaquil and Mississippi both encountered the same giant race from across the sea? The answer is entirely possible, because over the past many decades, evidence in the form of ancient records and giant skeletal remains of astonishing size has been found all over the world, from caves in Nevada to valleys in South America. These beings were not illusions. They were Nephilim survivors of the Great Flood, or late descendants of that great fall lingering within human history until they were wiped out by natural catastrophes or by intervention from heaven. And this world still holds far too many mysteries buried deep beneath the earth and the sea. The giants have fallen, but their bones are still crying out a truth we cannot escape. We are not the only race that once ruled this planet. Giants made flesh, giant footprints left across the world. I do not know whether anyone else feels the same way I do, but the myths and legends I often heard as a child always spoke of giants as though they were an essential part of the past. They did not feel like mere products of imagination. They seemed more like a collective memory recorded in civilization after civilization. Look at the figure of Odysseus in Greek mythology, the famous hero who was cast ashore on a wild island and confronted the savage, one-eyed giant Cyclops. Or in the dreamlike world of Grimm's fairy tales, we have Jack climbing the beanstalk to reach the kingdom of giants in the clouds. Even classical literature, such as Gulliver's Travels, devotes an entire section to Brobdingnag, the land of giant people. And in the ancient Chinese collection, Taiping Guangji, there is even a story about a group of women at sea who were caught in a storm, drifted onto an island, and were captured by giants who forced them to sew clothes for them. From all of these fragments, it certainly seems that giants were truly present. But my friends, since the 19th century after Darwin proposed the theory of evolution, those who called themselves anthropological experts slammed shut the door of belief and insisted that creatures like this could not possibly have existed. And yet, in recent years, as archaeological discoveries keep surfacing and the theory of evolution continues to reveal gaps it cannot fully explain, we are forced to think again. Were giants merely fiction, or were they a page of history that had been torn out? Next, we will take you along their actual footprints across the earth. First, let us look at a trace whose age challenges every law of time itself in the small town of Mpuluzi, South Africa. In the year 1912, the hunter Stoffel Ketsi accidentally stepped into what might be called a black hole of history. A giant footprint pressed deep into raw granite rock. Archaeologists made a preliminary estimate that it could be as old as 3.1 billion years, while local people called it Goliath's footprint. Measuring 1.2 meters in length, corresponding to a person at least 7 meters tall, this footprint showed no sign of being carved. It was embedded into the granite when the rock had still been soft magma with stone grains so perfectly consistent that the mathematician Peter Wagner sarcastically remarked, "The chances that a little extraterrestrial licked this shape into existence are greater than the chances that it was formed by natural erosion." The researcher Klaus Dona believed this was a cry for help from a lost prehistoric civilization, and he found a second piece of evidence in South America to reinforce that belief. That next piece takes us to southern Ecuador in the year 1964, where the family of Father Carlos Vaca discovered giant skeletal remains in a deep valley. Those specimens were later displayed by Klaus Dona in his exhibition Unsolved Mysteries in Austria. After examination, experts were left stunned when they confirmed that the heel bone and the occipital bone belonged to a giant as tall as 7.6 meters. And my friends, that truth did not stand alone. In the late 1950s, in the valleys of Turkey, people found fossilized femur bones measuring as much as 120 centimeters in length, which would mean their owners stood at least 5 meters tall. Even in Kansas, in the United States, Dr. C.N. Doherty reported a footprint corresponding to a person 7.62 meters tall. Believe me, these numbers do not lie. They are sketching out a map of those who once ruled the earth. And that is still not the end of it. The third piece of evidence takes us into a deeply mysterious spiritual space in Syria, the ancient temple of Ain Dara. There on the stone floor of the corridor in the Great Hall, people discovered 4 giant footprints, each one a full meter long. Most astonishing of all, the distance between the left and right steps measured as much as 9 meters. If this truly represented an ordinary stride, then the being who made it must have stood around 20 meters tall. The question is, were these the footprints of the gods worshipped by the ancients? Or are they proof that the Nephilim once walked freely through these very temples? Finally, and perhaps the strongest piece of real human evidence of all, is the photograph of the giant finger in Egypt made public in the year 2012. Gregory Spurry, a Swiss businessman, was shown a mummified finger measuring 38 centimeters in length by a grave robber in the year 1988. He described the finger as still having its nail intact, the skin torn, and carrying the musty stench of thousands of years of history. Spurry photographed it beside a 15-centimeter banknote for scale. Although the specimen later vanished along with the grave robber, the X-rays and medical assessments from that time confirmed one chilling fact. This was the finger of a humanoid being of gigantic size. My friends, today, a person standing 2.85 meters tall is listed as a world record and considered extraordinary. But compared with the owners of the 7-meter or 20-meter footprints we have just discussed, such a person would seem little more than a child. If giants were only myth, then why are there traces stamped across continents from South Africa to Syria to Kansas with such remarkable consistency? Why does history contain gaps that lie beyond the reach of evolutionary theory? The ancients used to say, "Wherever I walk, I leave behind my trace." These footprints are not just stone. They are a forceful reminder of a forgotten history waiting to be decoded. What do you think? Could there truly be a kingdom of giants lying deep beneath the dust of time, right under our feet? Leave your comment, because the truth is always greater than what we dare to imagine. Father Carlos Vaca uncovered a shocking truth about giants. If there was ever a man capable of standing at the boundary between faith, local memory, and archaeological mystery, it was Father Carlos Miguel Vaca Alvarado. In many articles circulated on this subject, he is described as the priest closely connected to the region of Shanghai Mina in the Gonzanama area of Loja province, Ecuador, and as the man who spent many years preserving giant bone fragments that local people believed were the remains of an ancient race of beings, far taller than ordinary humans. Popular accounts often portray him as more than a priest devoted to pastoral work. He is also described as a man who loved music, understood herbal medicine, enjoyed studying ancient artifacts, and was trusted by the local community as a respected self-taught archaeologist. This biographical portrait currently appears mainly in retellings from the fringe research world. And that is precisely what gives his image such a distinctive character. A man who belonged both to the church and to the folk memory of the Andes. What makes Father Vaca's story even more haunting is the very name Changamina itself. In many travel pieces and narrative retellings surrounding the case, Changamina is often explained as carrying a meaning close to the cemetery of the gods or the burial place of the ancient ones. Even though this etymological interpretation has not yet received strong academic confirmation from major linguistic studies, it still creates a very powerful symbolic connection, because when a land already carries within its name the memory of divine beings or ancient ancestors, and then oversized skeletal remains appear in that very place, the story immediately rises beyond the boundaries of ordinary archaeology and enters the realm of belief, legend, and reverence. That is also why Changamina is always retold as a place with both real geography and immense spiritual depth. According to what has been passed down in articles and the rare images of Father Vaca's collection, the most staggering element was not the number of artifacts, but the proportions of each individual bone fragment. People often mention a femur so large that its length could be compared to the height of a child of about 10 years old. Simply placing an adult beside that object would create an immediate sense of total disproportion compared to the modern human body. A bone like that instantly forces the mind to imagine a being standing around 7 meters tall, or even more, a size large enough to shake the entire framework of ordinary anatomy. Fringe sources often go on to describe the heel bone, the occipital bone, and several skull fragments as displaying similarly immense proportions, enough to reconstruct the image of a body far beyond every confirmed height record of the modern age. The condition of the bones also contributes to the sense of antiquity. They are often described as heavy, dark-surfaced and stained with the reddish-brown color of Andean earth, as though they had lain deep underground for a very long time. That color, that weight, and that fossil-like texture have led many people to believe that these remains emerged from a world far older than the written historical memory of the Loja region. Of course, the greatest controversy centers on what kind of bones they actually were. Major fact-checking organizations, such as the Associated Press and Reuters, when reviewing viral claims about the giants of Ecuador, cited experts who argued that the widely circulated images on the internet matched the fossils of a giant ground sloth, not the remains of giant humans. This is a point that any serious treatment of the subject ought to place squarely on the table. On the other side, supporters of Father Vaca's theory argue that some of the bones in his collection carried features consistent with human or primate bones, especially in the knee structure, the heel bone, and part of the skull. It is exactly this conflict between those two interpretations that turned the entire story into a case file that is both fascinating and deeply divisive. One side sees the traces of prehistoric megafauna, while the other sees a forgotten race of giant human beings. Father Vaca's story might have remained forever in the shadows, if not for the arrival of Klaus Dona, an Austrian expert known for searching out mysterious ancient artifacts. After the priest passed away in the year 1999, Klaus Dona contacted his family to gain access to the remaining bone fragments. From that moment on, the remains that had once been spoken of only in hushed local conversation stepped into the light, appearing in newspapers and international exhibitions around the world. It was no longer just a legend from a remote mountain region, but officially became a mystery case file that stirred global curiosity about the existence of giants. Later, Klaus Dona carried those bones through exhibitions on mysterious artifacts around the world. The most shocking detail he always emphasized was the reaction of orthopedic doctors when they saw them in person. They were genuinely puzzled. A being standing 7 meters tall would not simply be big. Its muscular system and joints would need to be engineered with unimaginable strength to support such a body. That forces us to confront a difficult question. If this truly was a human being, then it belonged to a completely different type of humanity, a version of the human race that has never appeared in any textbook. Even though this story remains controversial and has not been accepted by mainstream science, that very mystery has become the perfect missing piece for extending the legend of Father Vaca. If Father Vaca's story carries the color of legend, then the discoveries of anthropologist Russell Dement in the year 2013 form the bridge that brings us back toward reality. After a flash flood along the Ecuador-Peru border region, ancient skeletons emerged from the earth. Dement and his colleagues excavated about half a dozen remains. The fascinating part is that they did not stand 7 meters tall like the rumors of giants, but instead ranged from about 2.1 meters to 2.4 meters. For the small-statured people of the Andes, that height was still a genuine shock. It transformed the story from impossible into believable. Instead of dreaming about giants from mythology, we are suddenly forced to face a more realistic possibility. An unusually tall human population once lived there. Tests reportedly showed that they were completely healthy and carried no sign of disease. They were simply a naturally tall tribe that history happened to overlook. The question that troubles us most is always this: if those skeletons truly existed, where are they now? And when we go looking for an answer, we find ourselves colliding with theories of very different kinds. First, many people believe in a scenario worthy of a motion picture involving an iron hand from major institutions such as the Smithsonian Institution. People whisper that artifacts capable of shaking mainstream evolutionary theory were quietly collected and hidden away in inaccessible archives. Even though there is still no ironclad evidence for that claim, the silence of scientific institutions has unintentionally nourished a persistent belief that a truth is being aggressively concealed. Yet when we step away from world-scale conspiracies, we encounter another theory that feels more human and in some ways even more painful: the quiet scattering caused by time itself. Just imagine it. After Father Vaca died, his private collection suddenly became orphaned, no longer protected or clearly inventoried by any national museum. Those precious bones may simply have been dispersed through the turning points of family life. One fragment kept by relatives as a memory, another sold to private collectors, and a large portion perhaps lost forever. This kind of disappearance requires no hidden power at all. It needs only human indifference and the powerful pull of the black antiquities market. Alongside that, for those who continually reflect on the link between archaeology and faith, their eyes turn toward a more distant place, the discreet archives of the Vatican. Within communities that believe in the existence of the Nephilim, the giants mentioned in the Bible, some believe that the remains in Ecuador are living evidence of the antediluvian age, because they would carry uniquely sensitive spiritual value. They may have been transferred into religious underground vaults for preservation rather than displayed before the world. If Father Vaca's story in the remote Andes was merely the solitary effort of a priest trying to preserve the light of truth, then, on the other side of the continent, we are facing a reality far darker. A reality in which the evidence did not simply disappear on its own, but was deliberately erased by some of the most powerful hands in the scientific world. We are talking about the Smithsonian Institution in Washington District of Columbia, a place regarded as a temple of human knowledge, yet accused of being a black hole that swallowed thousands of giant skeletons in order to protect the theories it had already chosen to revere. Why would such a prestigious institution be so afraid of oversized remains? Could it be because their very existence would amount to a death sentence for the official history we have been taught? The Smithsonian Institution and the skeletons that were quietly hidden away. We have just walked through giant footprints scattered across the continents. But there is one troubling question that anyone with a critical mind must ask. If there is so much evidence, why do we not see it in textbooks? The answer lies in a dark corner of modern history, where powerful institutions such as the Smithsonian Institution and Western governments have been accused of directing a campaign to erase memory. Although many excavations have produced clear evidence of the existence of giants in the past, strangely enough, nearly all of those discoveries quickly fell into silence. Records disappeared, sites were sealed off, photographs were dismissed as fake, and quite a few locations where giant bones were once discovered have now become no-fly zones off limits to the public, as though the authorities do not want anyone taking even one step closer. Much like the traces of UFOs, giants seem to be one of those sensitive subjects that governments avoid discussing in public. First, let us look at the suspicious disappearance of 80 giant skeletons at Argadava, Romania. In the 1940s, during an excavation in the town of Argadava, Romania, once the greatest stronghold of the Dacian King Burebista, archaeologists discovered something no one expected, a burial ground containing dozens of giant skeletons. Local villagers were the primary labor force during the digging process. One of them, Mr. Ionita Floria, now over 80 years old, said that he personally discovered a giant skull 2 to 3 times larger than an ordinary human skull. Immediately after that discovery, a familiar pattern was set in motion. All civilian workers were ordered to stop. A special research team was brought in. The artifacts were loaded onto trucks in an atmosphere of deep secrecy and transported away during the night. In total, they collected 80 skeletons, most of them still intact, along with a giant ceramic jar filled with rice. But from that day to this one, no one knows where those remains are now. No report, no record. No one is allowed to speak of them again. But my friends, this concealment did not stop at ancient graves. It reached deep into the earth itself, where a 10-meter skeleton and the buried Hyperborea tunnel were said to be hidden. In the year 1976, at the Rosia, Montana gold mine, workers discovered a human skeleton measuring 10 meters in height, lying inside an ancient tunnel. It was tunnel number 13, believed to have been built 5,500 years earlier by the Agathyrsi, a mysterious race once living in that region. In February of the year 2012, a geological team tracing a vein of gold reached the deeper layers of the tunnel and discovered a grave marker made from an unknown material. 55% carat gold dust, 15% granite, and 30% tungsten. A compound unknown to any modern technology. Immediately afterward, the area was sealed off. The 10-meter skeleton also disappeared completely from every official report. The tunnel was permanently closed. All related information was hidden away. Next, we cannot ignore the living witnesses in Skyeni, Romania, who were forced into silence. Also, in the 1940s, in Skyeni, in the Buzău Mountains, local villagers were planting an apple orchard when they uncovered an ancient burial ground containing multiple giant skeletons. Alongside the complete skeletons, they also found pottery fragments, jewelry, and strange metal statues standing about 1 meter tall. An archaeological team arrived, quickly gathered everything, and then vanished. No official statement was ever made. From that moment on, the local people refused to share any further details. The question arose, did they remain silent out of fear? Or were they forced into silence by a power they did not dare confront? And the height of that control came in the form of a media ban issued by someone who could not be named. In the year 2009, a local television station in Romania was preparing to air an investigative report about giants and secret tunnels beneath the Busegi Mountains. Just before the broadcast, they received an anonymous phone call from a man who coldly warned them to stop at once. Stop your investigation into the Busegi Mountains immediately. That information cannot be made public. There are certain structures responsible for handling cases like this. You do not want to know who we are, and you do not want to interview us either. That is all I'm going to say. Immediately afterward, the call ended, and the report was never aired. My friends, is there an invisible hand quietly controlling the flow of information about giants? If so, then why is the truth about an ancient race that once existed being hidden so carefully? Could it be that if humanity learned that truth, every definition of human origins, every theory of evolution we have revered for so long would have to be rewritten from the beginning? Could it be that the existence of these 10-meter tall beings is living proof that we are not the peak of evolution, but merely small inheritors on a planet that once belonged to giant gods? What do you think about these unnameable phone calls? Could the silence of the Smithsonian Institution and various governments be meant to protect us from a truth too shocking to bear, or to protect their own power? Leave your thoughts in the comments below so we can discuss it together. But do not look away just yet, because Father Vaca's fossilized bones and Russell Dement's excavation may be nothing more than isolated pieces on a much larger board. If the skeletons themselves have vanished from reality, then fortunately, our ancestors left behind other kinds of codes in timelines of ink that cannot be denied, drawn across parchment and paper. We are no longer looking at a pit in the ground or a display case. Let us widen our view across the entire continent through the fog of time and face evidence even more astonishing. This is where ancient ink begins to speak, revealing a world we think belongs only in nightmares or science fiction. An ancient map portraying the Americas, the land of Merpeople and giants. Amid countless beautiful and finely carved details, the map leaves a lasting impression with the image of a group of Merpeople holding an object that looks like a UFO-like disc near Patagonia, the legendary land long rumored to be home to giants. That single detail is enough to make the modern viewer pause for a very long time. Because when we step back and look at the whole thing, this is clearly not some casual illustration. This is a major cartographic work from the 16th century created by Diego Gutierrez, a map maker of the Casa de la Contratación under the Spanish crown, working together with the Dutch engraver Hieronymus Koch in the year 1562. The map consists of 6 engraved sheets joined together, measuring approximately 93 by 86 centimeters, and scholars currently know of only 2 surviving copies, one in the Library of Congress in the United States and the other in the British Library. That fact alone makes every detail on the map even more worthy of reflection. Throughout the 15th and 16th centuries, the lands of the Western Hemisphere were completely veiled in mystery. After Christopher Columbus set foot in the New World, although he was not the first European to do so, other Europeans began spreading fantastical stories about sea monsters, strange wild animals, and unusual civilizations. That response was entirely understandable for Europe at the time. An ocean had just opened before their eyes. New coastlines were slowly appearing on sea charts. Expeditions returned carrying gold, unfamiliar plants, exotic birds, unknown beasts, and stories that left listeners both fascinated and uneasy. For Europeans of the 15th and 16th centuries, the New World was at once geography, a stage for imagination, and a place where imperial power wanted to leave its mark upon the map. In the year 1562, the Spanish cartographer Diego Gutierrez and the Dutch engraver Hieronymus Koch worked to create a detailed map of the Americas. This map was a monumental print made up of 6 joined sheets. The map of the Americas bore the title Americae Chiv Quarte Orbis Partis Nova et Exactissima Descriptio. It was published in the port city of Antwerp in Belgium under the title America Sive Quarte Orbis Partis Nova et Exactissima Descriptio, in Latin meaning America, or a new and most exact description of the 4th part of the world. Even in that title, we can already see the spirit of the age. The 4th part of the world was Europe's way of learning to name America as a separate reality, rather than viewing it merely as an extension of Asia. That map carried both intellectual ambition and political ambition. It was like a declaration that Spain had seen, measured, named, and begun to possess this world through the language of power. The Library of Congress in the United States also regards it as an official map that helped define the image of Spain's America before the other European powers. Although this finely engraved map depicted geographical features with notable accuracy in many cases, for example, the eastern coast of the Americas and the western coasts of Europe and Africa, it also absorbed the influence of what mainstream scholars call folklore. You can find many legends and rumors about the New World that were circulating at that time. Sirens, ravenous sea monsters, cannibals, erupting volcanoes in Mexico, and a land of giants. And I cannot help wondering whether all of it was truly just myth. What makes it so remarkable is that these fantastical elements stand right beside fairly accurate geographic information. The Library of Congress notes that the map shows the Amazon River system, Lake Titicaca, the location of Mexico City, Potosi, Florida, and many coastlines of South America, Central America, North America, and the Caribbean with considerable clarity. And yet, on that same map, we also find parrots, monkeys, merpeople, terrifying sea monsters, cannibals, the giants of Patagonia, and even an erupting volcano in central Mexico. It is precisely this side-by-side placement of the known and the reported that gives the map its strange mix of authority and mystery. Because in the 16th century, most of Europe's population could not read. And so maps were not merely tools for navigation. They were also a common medium for telling stories about specific places and ancient civilizations. In fact, they were treated almost like storybooks. That point is extremely important. Maps of the Renaissance often lived 2 lives at once. One life belonged to rulers, sailors, merchants, and scholars. The other belonged to the collective imagination. In many cases, sea monsters and strange figures appeared more often on maps intended for presentation, display, education, and dramatic effect, than on strictly technical nautical charts. The Library of Congress also notes that these map monsters usually appeared on maps intended more for decoration and illustration than for direct maritime use. So when we see Merpeople sea dragons or giants on Gutierrez's map, we are looking at the visual language of that age, a language in which rumor symbol, fear, and the ambition of conquest all coexisted on a single sheet of paper. What makes this ancient map so compelling is that the western coastline of South America appears to be filled with danger and mystery. We can see a fearsome whale crushing a helpless ship, a dragon, a giant serpent, and a group of merpeople holding an object shaped like a UFO-like disc near Patagonia, the legendary land, said to be inhabited by giants. If we read it through the eyes of a European living in the year 1562, the message becomes immediately clear. Beyond the ocean lay immense opportunity, but also dangerous waters, where ships could be destroyed, where strange creatures could appear where nature had not yet submitted, and where human beings might encounter tribes whose size far exceeded the European norm of the time. The map therefore reads at once like a news report, a warning, and a stage upon which every story circulating through the ports has been gathered into image. That land is now part of Argentina and Chile, and it was described by the Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan after his encounter with the indigenous Tehuelche tribe in the year 1520. According to what he described, the Tehuelche were very tall and must have seemed like giants compared with the small Spaniards. That point becomes even easier to understand when we place it against the physical proportions of that age. The Tehuelche were indigenous inhabitants who lived across the plains of Patagonia from the Strait of Magellan to the Rio Negro. And they became famous in European literature for their large stature and physical strength. When European sailors entered a new world where people's bodies seemed different in scale, that visual contrast could very easily be magnified into the myth of giants. In other words, myth often begins from a core of truth and then grows larger with every retelling. To prove that he had truly encountered giant beings in the new land, Magellan captured 2 Tehuelche and tried to bring them back to Spain. However, they did not survive the voyage to Europe, and Magellan was left with nothing except stories and legends about a land of giants. Here we begin to see a very familiar pattern in the history of exploration. An initial encounter takes place in a setting of tension, bewilderment, and cultural difference. Then the story is carried back to Europe in a heightened, dramatized form, because the storyteller understands perfectly well that what astonishes people always survives longer than dry measurements and figures. That is exactly why Patagonia very early became a place that existed half on the map and half in Europe's imagination. Was the map a blend of myth and reality? Despite the fact that we seem to be holding a map that looks partly fictional, filled with many non-existent places, Gutierrez and Koch also named settlements, rivers, mountains, and capes that truly existed. The map shows the Amazon River Lake, Titicaca, Mexico City, and rivers in South America and Florida. You can see many accurate features of the southern, central, northern, and Caribbean coastal regions of the Americas. And that makes me wonder, why was there such a strange mixture? The most reasonable answer lies in the very nature of 16th century knowledge itself. Mapmakers at that time worked from many different streams of information. They had pilots' notes, sailors' journals, reports from royal officials, missionaries' accounts, oral stories told in port cities, and a storehouse of symbols that had lived for a very long time in the Mediterranean and Atlantic imagination. The coastlines, river mouths, cities, and sea routes were treated with the spirit of measurement. But the open sea, the frontier, and the regions Europe did not yet understand were covered with strange creatures, unfamiliar tribes, and dramatic imagery. From that angle, this map is very honest about its own age. It tells us clearly what Europe had seen and what Europe was believing, fearing, and telling one another. Perhaps the answer lies in one especially fascinating point: they truly encountered part of it. And the rest was born from the way human beings interpreted what they did not yet fully understand. They really did reach new coastlines. They really did meet indigenous peoples taller than the European standard of that time. They really did sail through dangerous waters. They really did see volcanoes, mighty rivers, strange ecosystems, and cities that left them stunned. And from those realities, the imagination of an entire continent began adding new layers of meaning. Tall people became giants. Strange marine creatures became merpeople. Every unfamiliar body of water could become the stage for sea monsters. That is why the map of Diego Gutierrez and Hieronymus Koch has become so priceless. It is like an instant photograph, capturing the very moment when Europeans were still struggling to define this new world. At that time, maps were not created through cold measurement or the emotionless satellites of modern science. Instead, they were a chaotic chorus blending direct observations made on the deck of a ship with ancient fears buried in the human heart, imperial ambition, and pure human amazement before the unknown. In other words, this is not merely a map of land or sea. It is a map of the mind, a journal recording humanity's astonishment when it first laid hands on the new world. And perhaps that is also why the image of the Merpeople off the coast of Patagonia continues to haunt us so deeply. They stand exactly on that fragile boundary between reality and illusion, between what sailors saw with their own eyes upon the waves and what they sensed was hidden in the dark abyss below. So when we ask ourselves, was all of this real or was it only myth? Perhaps the answer is far deeper than that. This map is living evidence of the way myths are born, and sometimes the way a civilization tells the story of its own terror before nature becomes the most authentic kind of legacy that history can leave behind. But if the parchment maps of the 16th century did no more than sketch the shadows of giants along the edge of the ocean, then in another corner of the world, there were people who did far more than glimpse them from a distance. They actually stepped in, came face to face with them, and spoke with them. Leaving behind the savage waves of the Atlantic, we now cross through bands of white cloud to the roof of the world, the mysterious land of Tibet. Here among ancient monasteries, lying silent in the frozen snow, there are more than prayers and sacred chants. Hidden there as well are terrifying secrets about a world lying directly beneath our feet. Here one man stepped through the gate of reality and entered the eternal darkness deep within the earth. Hold your breath, because this is the fateful encounter of a Tibetan Lama with giant beings guarding a forgotten civilization deep underground. A real encounter with giants. If the Vatican is the powerful heart of Christianity in the middle of ancient Rome, then Tibet is the holy seat of eternal secrets, standing high above the sea of clouds in the Himalayas. Across the world, people turn toward St. Peter's Basilica in search of salvation, while seekers of hidden wisdom turn toward Tibet as the final destination of spiritual knowledge. A place where the boundary between man and the divine seems to dissolve. Why does this land carry such an overwhelming pull? To Western minds, Tibet is far more than some distant place on a map. It is the very concept of absolute mystery. Amid the snow-covered peaks of the Himalayas, time itself seems to stand still. This is a place where the boundary between reality and myth becomes so thin that people believe a single misstep could carry you straight into another dimension. For the people who live there, divine signs are not fairy tales meant to soothe children. They are part of the breath of life itself. They believe in the existence of Shambhala, a hidden kingdom of light in incarnate beings who can govern life and death and in spiritual codes carved into stone thousands of years ago. People tell stories of accomplished lamas who could leave footprints pressed deep into solid rock as easily as if they were stepping into soft mud, or of masters able to generate inner tummo heat in blizzards of sub-zero cold, drying-soaked blankets by the power within themselves alone. But beyond even those individual miracles, Tibet has long stood in the imagination of humanity as a relay station between Earth and the cosmos. Look at Mount Kailash, the sacred pyramid-shaped peak whose summit has never felt the touch of a human foot. For billions of people from Hinduism to Buddhism, this is no mere mass of stone. It is the axis mundi, the center of the world, the place where the gods dwell and govern the wheel of rebirth. People believe that simply walking around the base of that mountain can wash away the sins of an entire lifetime. That is an awe-inspiring spiritual power, an act of reverence so absolute that even the most materialistic minds are left bowing in astonishment. Tibet is a vast archive preserving knowledge about consciousness that modern science has only just begun to touch at the outermost edge. Americans and many in the West have long been drawn there by a deep hunger for Shambhala, the legendary kingdom of holy beings, a place believed to hold advanced weapons and the towering wisdom of a civilization that withdrew into shadow to await its return. It is that sacred atmosphere where the ringing of bronze bells mingles with the howl of wind through mountain passes that created an unshakable conviction. Tibet holds not only the visible world of monasteries, but also a hidden depth of bottomless caves. Beneath that frozen shell, the heart of the earth may still be beating in ways we cannot imagine. And it was precisely at the center of this Eastern Vatican, directly beneath the massive stone walls of the Potala Palace, that a terrifying secret was revealed through the testimony of a man who truly stepped out of the world of light and into the everlasting darkness below. That legendary figure was Lobsang Rampa, a Tibetan Buddhist Lama who brought the hidden side of the snow-covered land into the light of the wider world. His life had already been an epic of willpower from childhood when he was the son of a powerful noble official in the Tibetan government. Though he was born into privilege, Rampa did not live a life of ease. Instead, he endured extremely harsh discipline from his father, who hoped his son would grow into a capable nobleman. At only 4 years old, the boy Lobsang was already being introduced to survival trials, such as horseback riding and martial training. The peak of that discipline came with the examination required to enter the famous Chakpori Monastery. A 7-year-old child had to sit in unmoving meditation for 3 consecutive days from early morning until late at night, with no food or drink. In his memoir, Rampa described the moment when the boundary between life and death seemed to blur as he entered the final day of that test, with his body exhausted and his mind spinning. He wrote that the monastery seemed to melt into a haze of brightly colored buildings and spinning mountain ranges, while the rock beneath him felt as sharp as knives cutting into the most sensitive parts of his body. And yet, through a willpower far beyond his years, that young boy conquered the trial and opened a new and deeply mysterious chapter in his life. He passed the examinations with distinction and was elevated to the rank of a High Lama, a senior spiritual position in Tibetan Buddhism, when he was only a little over 10 years old. At the same time, it was through these extraordinary experiences that the future Lama went on to produce his astonishing autobiography, The Third Eye. That work was not merely an ordinary book. It was a door thrown wide open into the Tibetan worldview and vision of the universe, where questions about the origin of humanity and the purpose of the earth were answered in ways the modern world had never imagined. Across 300 pages, readers followed the journey of a spiritual prodigy, as the young Lobsang endured one severe test after another in medicine and esoteric knowledge, eventually receiving the rank of High Lama while still only a little over 10 years old. Most striking of all was the chapter describing the surgery that opened the inner eye in the center of his forehead, an initiation rite that allowed his soul to travel through time, where he was stunned to realize that in a previous existence, he himself had once been incarnated as a giant. Specifically at Chakpori Monastery, Lobsang Rampa underwent a ritual that modern medicine would likely call madness. Yet to the lamas, it was a spiritual operation meant to awaken the third eye. Rampa recalled that horrifying and mesmerizing moment. The lama brought out a shining steel instrument that looked like a small U-shaped awl with tiny teeth at the tip. Just as the sun went down, he pressed it hard into the center of my forehead and began turning the handle. I felt a current run down my spine, and time itself seemed to stop. There was no tearing pain of flesh, but the vibration as the drill point touched the frontal bone of my skull stunned me. He kept drilling deeper through the bone until it reached the most sensitive energy center of the brain. The greatest difference here is this. While other religions tend to treat the opening of spiritual sight as a mysterious inward process of discipline in Tibet, it was carried out as an actual operation within the visible world. That stands as proof of the profound depth and time-defying knowledge held by this land. After that door was opened, the world in Rampa's eyes changed completely. He began to see the aura and energy field surrounding every person like a multicolored mist. He explained it this way. The aura is the mirror of the soul. By observing its colors, lamas can read a person's health, moral character, and level of spiritual evolution. It is not an illusion, but the manifestation of the higher self working within the shell of flesh. To help Americans understand, Rampa compared the human body to a protective suit worn by the soul in order to experience life in the earthly realm. When we sleep, he said, the soul actually leaves the body to travel into other planes, while still remaining connected to the physical form by a silver cord, a concept also mentioned in the Bible. Because of this view, the Tibetan attitude toward death is entirely different from that of the West. To them, a dead body is simply an old rag that has served its time. When a person dies, the silver cord dissolves and the soul withdraws from the body in a form resembling the physical self, yet more refined and weightless. Death, in truth, is only a rebirth into a new life, where the soul lays aside its worn-out shell and continues its journey of learning. The story grows even more dramatic when Rampa describes an expedition into a network of tunnels and artificial chambers lying deep beneath the rock foundation of the Potala Palace in Lhasa. Guided by his masters, he carried a torch down endless stairways, moving through passageways formed by ancient volcanic activity, where the rock walls were covered with strange diagrams and paintings. The encounter with the giant gods. During his spiritual training to become an abbot, Lobsang Rampa had to endure an initiation rite of overwhelming intensity. He was taken down into a secret cave buried beneath layers of ancient Tibetan stone. In a place where sunlight had never touched, Rampa came face to face with a truth that could overturn every textbook of modern history. Inside that dark cavern, Rampa wrote, I saw 3 enormous coffins made of black quartz carved with strange symbols I had never seen in any sacred manuscript. When the lids were opened, the young lama's breathing seemed to stop. Before him lay 3 gigantic bodies covered in finely worked gold, 2 male and 1 female. They were not lifeless statues, but flesh and blood beings preserved perfectly beneath a shining layer of gold. What shocked him most was their size. The woman measured more than 3 meters, around 10 feet, while the largest man stood 5 meters tall, more than 16 feet. They had strange anthropological features. Skulls slightly pointed at the top, narrow jaws, and deep-set eyes full of commanding power. The old abbot, standing beside Rampa, whispered, Look carefully, my son. These are the gods who ruled this land when it was still a stretch of green plains long before the Himalayas rose into the sky. At that very moment, under the force of the energy within the cave, Rampa's third eye carried his soul out of his body and sent him on a journey millions of years back through time. He saw himself standing in a tropical paradise with rows of palm trees rustling in the wind, a vision utterly impossible to imagine in the frozen Tibet of today. In that out-of-body state, Rampa was astonished to realize that he himself also wore the body of a giant moving and playing among tall red-brown companions. That was humanity's golden age, when the earth lay closer to the sun and rotated in the opposite direction. Days were shorter, hotter, and the people of that age possessed intelligence far beyond our own. But catastrophe came from deep space. A wandering planet brushed past the Earth, creating a devastating gravitational shock. The Earth was hurled out of its former path and began spinning in reverse like a damaged top. Great floods swept across the continents and earthquakes tore the land apart. In that worldwide upheaval, Tibet was thrust more than 4,000 meters, over 13,000 feet above sea level, transforming a tropical paradise into a frozen deathland surrounded by towering volcanic mountain walls. Rampa did not only see giants, he also uncovered secrets of ancient spirituality. Beneath the flickering light of butter lamps in the cave, he saw enormous statues of the Buddha and divine beings, so tall that the light could not even reach their waists. That suggests a startling truth. Reverence for Buddha and the gods did not begin only a few thousand years ago. It had already existed millions of years earlier in prehistoric civilizations we have long forgotten. Those statues represented the trials and desires every being must overcome in order to find the true self. Rampa even revealed a concept that deeply interests many Americans today: reincarnation. Ordinary people like us today, he said, may in fact be the reborn souls of giants from the distant past, returning in smaller bodies to learn new lessons. According to the ancient traditions taught to Rampa in the beginning, every man and woman on earth could use the divine eye to communicate with the gods. That was the age of purity. But when humanity grew arrogant, greedy, and tried to use that power for selfish gain, the gods punished them by withdrawing that supernatural vision. Across tens of thousands of years, that ability remained only as a tiny spark hidden within human DNA. And only those with a rare destiny who passed through secret discipline like Rampa could reactivate it. In truth, even science has acknowledged that the human third eye lies deep within the skull, and its existence is entirely real. Picture it like this. Deep in the darkness of the skull at the center of the brain, there is a tiny organ no larger than a pea. Yet its tissue structure mirrors that of the eyes you are using to read these words. It has a retina. It has light-sensitive cells. Modern science calls it a degenerate eye. But to the Tibetan masters, it is an extremely sensitive biological antenna. Ordinarily, the pineal gland acts only like an internal clock releasing hormones that help you sleep. But when stimulated by ancient techniques such as the forehead boring operation Rampa described, that antenna can begin receiving frequencies the ordinary eye cannot see. Researchers in the West have found that in moments near death or deep meditation, the pineal gland may release a special chemical compound, DMT. This compound functions like rocket fuel for the mind, allowing human beings to see multi-dimensional images, memories from millions of years ago, or even communicate with beings beyond ordinary comprehension. If we look at Lobsang Rampa's story through that lens, everything suddenly becomes astonishingly logical. That painful operation was not an act of savagery, but a physical method for awakening a sleeping antenna. If that eye was truly activated, then what Rampa saw, the golden giants and the underground ancient civilizations, was not imagination. It may very well have been actual data his mind received after moving beyond the ordinary frequency range of a normal human being. At that point, the Lama's book is no longer a science fiction novel. It becomes something more like an expedition report from a man who recovered humanity's lost kaleidoscope, a form of vision we gradually abandoned during our evolution while chasing only material and practical values. Of course, for many decades now, the name Lobsang Rampa has remained at the center of fierce controversy. Skeptics argue that these were only fabricated stories, while believers point to a striking reality. His descriptions align in remarkable ways with ancient traditions and even with modern geological findings about an Earth that once endured enormous upheaval. So the question remains, could those giant beings still be hidden somewhere within Tibet's vast, tangled, mysterious cave systems, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves? Perhaps the clues needed to decode the true history of humanity do not lie in distant galaxies or in stars forever beyond our reach. Perhaps they lie silently beneath the cold earth under our own feet, patiently waiting for another third eye brave enough to see through the darkness and awaken the truth one more time. But if those beings were once the masters of the earth, once portrayed with pride on ancient maps or preserved with reverence in gilded caves, then another great question rises like a shadow over history. Why did they suddenly disappear? We no longer see giant footsteps shaking the deep wilderness, nor do we see the forms of Merpeople glimmering beneath the violent waves of the dark blue sea. Could it be that they truly perished in catastrophic great floods? Or did they choose to retreat into gray spaces that the ordinary human eye can no longer reach? It is time for us to search for an answer to this mysterious absence. Why do Merpeople and giants no longer exist in our world today? The most realistic hypothesis is the Great Flood itself, or the violent geological upheavals that Lobsang Rampa and many ancient civilizations spoke about. When the axis of the earth shifted and the seas rose, suddenly oversized beings such as giants would have been the first to suffer the greatest disadvantage. In biology, large creatures require enormous resources in order to survive. When the environment changes violently and food becomes scarce, such races would gradually weaken and disappear, making way for smaller, more adaptable beings that consume less energy, which is exactly what modern humanity is. Merpeople may have suffered the same fate when ocean currents changed and marine ecosystems were completely overturned after meteor impacts. Another equally intriguing hypothesis is that they never disappeared at all. They simply withdrew. According to the beliefs of many indigenous tribes, and even the records surrounding Tibet, when the surface world became too chaotic and filled with the aggression of a new humanity, the ancient races of higher intelligence chose to migrate into vast cave systems or regions that some describe as the Hollow Earth. They continue to exist in depths that modern radar and satellites still cannot reach. As for Merpeople, the deep ocean covers 70% of the Earth, and humanity has explored less than 5% of it. Abysses like the Mariana Trench could serve as the perfect refuge for an underwater civilization far beyond the reach of human technology. A third hypothesis for the disappearance of these strange races is the difference in frequency and dimension. This is an argument rooted more in spirituality and advanced quantum thought. Some propose that the Earth has undergone a process of frequency descent. In the Golden Age, when humanity could still use the third eye, our reality was more luminous and more multidimensional. At that time, giants and merpeople existed at a vibrational frequency we were able to see and interact with. But when humanity entered an age of spiritual decline, when the mind became more practical, more heavy, and more bound to material things, our own frequency was pulled downward. As a result, we lost the ability to perceive beings who exist at a higher level. They are still there, right beside us, but like a radio station broadcasting on a different frequency. The ordinary eyes of modern humans can no longer receive their signal. Ancient maps and the testimonies of lamas are the remaining fragments from a time when the two worlds still overlapped. In fact, when researchers studied the Codex Vaticanus, the treasure of the Aztec people now preserved in the Vatican Library, they encountered a harsh truth. The Earth was once home to 4 generations of giants, and each generation was wiped out by devastating catastrophes. From terrible famine to fires that consumed continents, to violent storms that shattered everything, every age came to an end. Finally, the 4th generation, those who lived during the age of the Son of Water, were completely drowned in a worldwide great flood. The German scholar Alexander von Humboldt, while studying ancient manuscripts, found one detail filled with hope. Not all of them died. 7 giants survived by hiding in deep caves. One of them, Zelhua, later built the Great Pyramids at Chololan in memory of the mountain that had saved his life. That suggests the giants did not vanish completely after the catastrophe. They became a handful of isolated survivors and began withdrawing from the world. Why could modern humans not live alongside them? The answer lies in the extreme difference in both physical form and temperament. The Africanist Davidson, when excavating in the Okavango River basin, described a race of unimaginable strength. One of their hands could stop the flow of an entire river. Their cough could send birds flying as if from a storm. And they carried elephants and hippopotamuses home as easily as we carry a market basket. That strength, combined with a nature described in historical accounts as cruel and savage, turned them into objects of terror. The journal of the Arab diplomat Ahmad ibn Fadlan in the 12th century recorded the capture of a giant in the far northern lands in what is now the Pechori region. He described the creature as having a head the size of a large barrel and ribs as enormous as palm branches. People had to use massive iron chains to bind him to a tree outside the city because he was so violent. A being that powerful and that difficult to restrain clearly had no place in a human society, slowly moving toward civilization and order. Even after humanity entered the age of oceanic exploration, traces of them still appeared. In the year 1520, the legendary Magellan was stunned when he encountered a giant on the coast of Patagonia. In his journal, he wrote that even his tallest sailors reached only to the waist of that being. More recently, in the year 1919, the British researcher Gerald Alston described a terrifying experience after being captured by a tribe of giants standing 3 meters tall in the mountains of Venezuela. The physical difference was so great that even one careless shove from a giant child was enough to break Alston's arm and leave him in pain for months. When we gather together, records from the ancient world through the more recent past, a clear picture begins to emerge. Giants and merpeople truly did exist alongside humanity. However, because their numbers became so small after the great catastrophes, they were forced to choose a hidden way of life. They withdrew into the steep mountains of Venezuela, the untouched forests of the Amazon, the deep caves beneath Tibet, and the unexplored abysses of the sea. The ferocity described by explorers may have been the final self-defense mechanism of a race nearing extinction, meant to keep modern human curiosity at a distance. Could it be that in the darkest corners of this planet, the old gods still exist in silence, watching us from afar, waiting for an age when humanity has grown gentle and wise enough to accept their difference once again? Perhaps the truth has never vanished at all. Perhaps it is only hiding, preserving the final breaths of a lost golden age. However, if those boundaries were erased, if the footsteps that once shook the earth became part of the rhythm of modern life, could we truly live in harmony? Let us step together into a challenging hypothesis. what would a world look like if human beings lived alongside giants, merpeople, or little people? Exploring human life during the age when giants built the pyramids. Let us journey back into the distant past, before the Great Pyramid of Giza and Stonehenge had endured the erosion of thousands of years of wind and storm. In their first days, they rose in full majesty beneath a deep blue sky. They were not merely lifeless masses of stone, but undeniable symbols of a genius level of creative power. And yet, one great question has always troubled the scientific world. How could a society labeled primitive and lacking advanced technology possibly have been the author of such monumental works? When we look closely at the sheer scale and almost unbelievable complexity of these structures, we cannot help but raise a profound question about the limits of ordinary human ability. Look at the extraordinary precision of their arrangement. The Great Pyramid of Giza is aligned with stunning accuracy to the three brightest stars of Orion, a symbol of resurrection in ancient Egyptian culture. Modern science, with all of its advanced machinery, still has not produced a truly workable method for recreating such a wonder. Even the foundations of the temple at Baalbek in Lebanon, with stone blocks weighing thousands of tons, present a challenge beyond the limits of even the most powerful modern cranes. Among all the proposed theories, the hypothesis of giants may be the key that unlocks more of these mysteries than any other. Scientists agree that the pyramids were built from millions of finely cut stone blocks. Yet the method of moving them remains an absolute mystery. Look at the numbers. The Great Pyramid of Khufu was built from approximately 2,300,000 stone blocks, each weighing on average from 2.5 tons to 50 tons. For ordinary human beings, raising a 50-ton block to a height of 140 meters is beyond imagination. But if we seriously consider the existence of giants, everything suddenly becomes far more logical. With their immense stature, those children of Gaia would have possessed overwhelming physical advantages and terrifying strength compared with us. In the year 1901, the historian Hans Ferdinand Helmholtz stated in his World History that the construction of these pyramids without modern resources appears impossible by ordinary human strength alone. The common belief is that these works were in fact created by giants. According to spiritual materials and ancient records published in Changkin, these structures were not merely tombs or astronomical monuments. Legend says that the Great Pyramid was a terrestrial reflection of a higher realm called the Giant Heavenly World. The ruler of that world was the giant Heavenly Buddha, and his sacred palace was made of shining golden towers, radiant and brilliant, giving off a mysterious diamond-like light. Most remarkable of all in that giant heavenly world, the golden towers were not only the dwelling places of Buddhas, but also the source of light that nourished all life. The giants of that age, with deep faith and guidance from the heavens, built these monuments as a means of connecting earth and sky man and the divine. From that purpose, the pyramids were designed according to the golden proportions of the universe in order to gather energy from the stars, especially from Orion. Naturally, with such immense significance, the building of the pyramids was never simply a matter of human hands dragging stone. It was the union of two great forces, giant physical strength and stone-cutting technology driven by energy. With an average height ranging from 5 meters to 7 meters, a giant would have possessed an arm span and leveraged dozens of times greater than an ordinary human being. To them, 50-ton blocks would not have been impossible objects, but more like large bricks moved through a system of leverage proportionate to the scale of their bodies. At the same time, studies suggest that the giants of that era possessed intelligence awakened from higher realms. They did not use chisels or copper hammers. Instead, they used devices that emitted sound waves or concentrated energy to cut stone as smoothly as cutting butter, producing surfaces so perfectly joined that even a sheet of paper could not slip between two blocks. Most remarkably, the Great Pyramid did not originally appear gray and weathered as it does today. It was covered in a brilliant layer of polished white limestone, capable of reflecting sunlight so intensely that it could be seen from dozens of miles away. That outer casing was how the giants imitated the shimmering brilliance of the golden towers in the sacred palace of the giant heavenly Buddha. Today, modern science keeps asking how stone blocks weighing dozens of tons could have been raised to a height of 140 meters. From the perspective of giant civilization, there are two explanations. First, with their enormous size, giants could have built ramps and lifting platforms where each movement raised the stone by meters at a time, rather than by only a few centimeters as small human beings would manage. Second, some spiritual records suggest that giants understood how to use incantations or sound wave technology to reduce the effective weight of the stones, making them lighter during transport. That would explain how they could place blocks with millimeter precision at such astonishing heights. The theory becomes even more compelling when we consider that in the year 1988, Gregor Spori, while studying the pyramids of Egypt, discovered a finger more than 30 centimeters long. Could it have been the result of an accident during the construction of the pyramids? And according to scientific calculations, a finger of that size would correspond to a being standing around 5 meters tall. Beyond that, even the sacred texts of ancient Egypt mention a period when giants existed upon the earth. The most vivid evidence appears in paintings showing giants standing nearly as tall as a giraffe, or images of a single giant carrying 2 enormous stones during the building of the pyramids. It is important to remember that ancient drawings were the most truthful language of their age, depicting what people in Egypt actually saw and heard at that time, which gives strong weight to the idea that they were not simply imagined. And there is still much more evidence supporting the existence of giants. In the late 1950s, giant fossil bones belonging to beings as tall as 5 meters were discovered in the valleys of Turkey. Then, in the year 1964, a priest also found a giant skeleton measuring 7 meters long at a site in Ecuador and brought it back for display in a museum bearing his name. And the idea that giants built the pyramids is no more unreasonable than the idea of ordinary humans building a house. For that reason, the conclusion is entirely logical. The most important part of this story is not the technique, but the purpose. Giants did not build the pyramids in order to display power or to create tombs for ambitious kings. They built them in absolute reverence for the divine. To them, every stone laid in place was a prayer, and every angle of the pyramid was an act of honoring the order of the universe. When human morality began to decline and mankind became smaller, both in body and in soul, giant civilization completed its mission. They left the pyramids behind as a final gift. A historical monument meant to remind later generations of one truth: we were once that great, and our true origin comes from higher realms full of light. Their absence today is a natural withdrawal, as the frequency of the earth changed, but the megalithic stones still stand there, silently defying time and waiting for humanity to recover the third eye needed to understand the secrets the giants entrusted to them. Exploring the journey of the giants who built the Temple of Jupiter. If the Great Pyramid of Giza has left the whole world bewildered by its millimeter-level precision, then the temple complex of Baalbek in Lebanon is where modern logic itself is pushed to the edge of collapse. Set deep within the solemn Bekaa Valley, the Temple of Jupiter is not merely a magnificent Roman ruin. It also hides a physical mystery that even in the 21st century we still have not been able to explain in any truly satisfying way. The most shocking detail does not lie in the towering rows of stone columns, but deep beneath the platform itself, where 3 legendary stone blocks known as the Trelithon still remain. Try to picture stones more than 19 meters long, each weighing from 800 to 1,000 tons, fitted tightly, side by side at a height of more than 6 meters above the ground. To help you grasp it, the weight of a single one of these stones is equal to about 130 full-grown elephants, or 3 fully loaded Boeing 747 aircraft, a figure so enormous that even the most powerful hydraulic cranes of today would strain to move them. The dead end for archaeology lies here, no matter how many theories we apply. Whether systems of levers, wooden rollers, or tens of thousands of laborers, all of them collapse when faced with the steep and uneven terrain of Baalbek itself. Moving an object weighing 1,000 tons across hilly ground, then lifting it into the air and placing it with precision into position without leaving behind any trace of machinery or pulley systems appears to be an impossible task for the ancient Romans. That brings us to a remarkably sharp and critical question. If the Romans truly possessed some form of super technology capable of moving these megalithic blocks, why did they not use it in thousands of other structures across their mighty empire? Why do we see no equivalent trilithon blocks in Rome or anywhere else? The uniqueness of Baalbek opens the door to a stunning possibility. The Romans were not the true builders of this colossal foundation. They may simply have been later arrivals who built their own temple upon the platform of a far greater civilization that had already existed there thousands of years earlier. It is precisely in that gray zone of history that the giant hypothesis begins to emerge as the most logical explanation for what appears so deeply irrational before our eyes. In local folklore, Baalbek has long been known as the City of the Giants. The oldest traditions of the Bika Valley speak of a race of extraordinary stature beings, with enough physical strength to lift the stones of heaven and set them down in order to connect the earth to the sky. With heights and arm spans many times greater than those of human beings, arranging the trilithon stones may have been as natural for them as laying baked bricks is for us when building a house. This is not only a story of brute force, but of a union between immense strength and a superior understanding of gravity and matter knowledge that modern humanity may have accidentally lost. Even more striking is what we see when we turn to the so-called stone of the pregnant woman, still lying unfinished in the nearby quarry, weighing as much as 1,200 tons. Its very presence makes the idea of giants seem even more vivid. That stone appears to be waiting for some enormous hand to come and lift it away, as though the construction process was interrupted suddenly by a global catastrophe. It almost seems as though the Temple of Jupiter was a gift, a final inheritance from an age when the gods and the giant sons of Gaia still walked upon the earth. And when we stand before the 1,000-ton stones of Baalbek, we are forced to admit one humbling truth. Human history is not a straight line rising from primitive beginnings toward modernity, but a series of cycles. Glorious civilizations that vanished and left behind megalithic footprints that our third eye is still struggling to decipher. If the 1,000-ton stones of Baalbek represent a civilization that has retreated into the distant past, then the most recent discoveries suggest that their traces were never confined to the Middle East or the frozen heights of Tibet. The Earth still holds blank zones on the map, places where wild nature is guarding secrets that modern humanity has never imagined. Leaving behind the dry deserts and limestone valleys, we now cross the ocean and move deep into the green lungs of the planet, where the dense canopy and tangled river systems of Ecuador stand watch over a megalithic inheritance that calls out to be understood. Prepare yourself, because we are about to step into a breathless expedition and confront a place where the scale of every structure surpasses every standard known to humanity, the lost city of the giants. exploring the city of the giants in the Amazon rainforest. For a very long time, the Amazon has been far more than a forest. It is a living entity filled with power, a miniature green planet hidden within the earth itself. And modern humanity has only dared to touch its outer skin. This is a place where the laws of nature seem to bend from isolated tribal peoples living completely apart from civilization, and possessing deadly knowledge of poison to reports of gigantic beasts, the last descendants of prehistory such as anacondas, stretching for dozens of meters, or black jaguars, said to carry the spirit of evil itself. In that thick mist and beneath those layers of leaves that never fully see the sunlight, the Amazon still guards blank zones on the map, places where any GPS device becomes useless and any strange sound may be the final warning. But among all the beasts and natural traps, the greatest mystery does not take the form of a living creature. It is a silent, cold, defiant truth that has existed for thousands of years, a city whose scale makes every human standard seem pitifully small. It was in the upper rainforest region of Ecuador in the year 2012 that a team of explorers pushed our imagination beyond its limits when they found traces that cannot be explained by ordinary archaeology, following ancient indigenous legends about a mighty race that once ruled the deep forest. The expedition fought its way through slippery terrain and dense fog only to stand frozen before a monumental megalithic structure. A giant pyramid measuring 80 meters at the base and rising to a height of 80 meters. The strangeness lay not only in its height, but in the massive stone blocks, each weighing tons, cut into irregular shapes, yet fitting together with astonishing perfection. In a harsh tropical rainforest environment, where transporting ordinary building material is already a nightmare, the idea of hauling stones weighing 2 tons to the height of a 25-story building using primitive tools presents an unsolvable problem for ordinary human beings. And it was not only the pyramid. The research team also discovered numerous stone walls, terraces, and building foundations scattered throughout the area as though they were the remains of a city that had once been extraordinarily advanced. But the astonishment of the research team, led by explorer Bruce Fenton, truly began only when they moved deeper into the ruins of that city. Scattered around the terraces and stone foundations were artifacts that Fenton described as undeniable evidence. They found stone hammers weighing dozens of kilograms and axe heads with handles as long as the height of a modern adult. Try lifting a hammer weighing 30 kilograms just to drive a nail, and you will understand immediately that these tools were never designed for our hands. They were crafted for beings with the size and muscular strength needed to turn 1,000-pound stones into easy building blocks. The local indigenous people had long called that land the Gateway of the Giants, the place where a tall race once lived in harmony with nature before vanishing, suddenly leaving behind a city whose scale far exceeded the abilities of any indigenous culture ever recorded in the history of the Amazon. Although Bruce Fenton and his team tried to call for a large-scale international archaeological excavation, the story of that city suddenly turned in a darker and far more suspicious direction. Not long after the first images of the megalithic stones and oversized tools were released, the area was abruptly sealed off by the authorities under the explanation of ecological preservation. Every attempt by independent expeditions to return was denied, and later official statements from the authorities insisted that these were merely natural structures formed by geology. And yet, anyone who has seen with their own eyes the squared angles and refined cut marks on those megalithic stones in the Amazon knows that nature does not build symmetrical pyramids, nor does it craft metal axes for giants. The silence now hanging over that region of Ecuador's rainforest raises a profound question for humanity. Could this truly be the remains of a giant civilization forgotten by history? Or is it a secret so overwhelming that it is being deliberately kept from the light of public view? Perhaps like the giant spirits of legend, that city has chosen to hide itself deep beneath the canopy of the Amazon in order to preserve its own sanctity. Those cold stone blocks still lie there silently waiting for a day when humanity no longer fears the truth, so that they may finally tell the full story of an age when giant footsteps once shook the entire wilderness. History may be rewritten by the victors, but the megalithic footprints and the giant axes in the deep jungle will always remain as an echo, reminding us of one truth: we were not the first masters of this world, and we are certainly not the only great beings who have ever existed on this planet. But if those giant footsteps left their mark upon the earth and within the ancient forests, then in a place that covers as much as 70% of this planet, another truth even more astonishing is still being concealed beneath the pressure of thousands of tons of water, leaving behind the dense canopy of the Amazon. We are about to make the deepest dive in human history, not in a steel submarine, but through the awakened power of the third eye. What you are about to hear does not appear in any textbook of oceanography. It is a true account retold by a cultivator who opened the third eye, someone who pierced through the layers of oceanic matter and saw living visions of a legendary kingdom still operating according to spiritual laws we have never imagined. Hold your breath, because we are entering the forbidden realm of the mystery of the Merpeople kingdom, the monks of the ocean. In complete contrast to the romantic mermaid images of popular films, the Merpeople race in multi-dimensional reality is a people of intense faith. They do not merely survive, they worship. Their domain is found within the magnificent palaces of prehistoric civilizations that sank to the ocean floor millions of years ago. There they transform those ancient ruins into sacred divine halls. Inside these temples, the stone walls still preserve incantations written in hieroglyphic script and memorial tablets dedicated to masters of esoteric cultivation. This is an absolute forbidden sanctuary, a place where only the king, the queen, and merpeople who have reached the highest levels of spiritual cultivation are permitted to enter. The most mysterious aspect of all is their system of illumination. They do not use electricity or ordinary fire. Instead, they use a special mineral containing magnesium. When activated through spiritual power, this stone emits a radiant blue-white light, burning steadily through centuries beneath immense water pressure without ever going out. The Merpeople believe that life is a path of cultivation leading toward union between heaven's sea and man. Yet because of their unique bodily structure, which lacks the same kind of Dantean system found in human beings, their path to transcendence is far more difficult. An ordinary merperson must pass through at least 7 reincarnated lifetimes before attaining spiritual fulfillment. Their king is not merely an administrative ruler, but must be a spiritual master who has reached at least the level of a bodhisattva. Meanwhile, the Merkeen possesses supernatural abilities that leave us in awe. She can summon the souls of marine creatures to aid in battle or manipulate water pressure itself to create devastating tidal waves for the defense of her kingdom. The history of the Merpeople kingdom records a shocking event in the 180th year of the reign of the ruling king at that time. A cruel sea monster appeared and spread terror, devouring countless members of the tribe. Through meditation, the Merking saw its true nature. It was a sea serpent that had cultivated itself for 788 years beneath the floor of the Arctic Ocean. It was 8 meters long, black as night with blood-red eyes that radiated a deadly murderous force so toxic that no living thing within a radius of several kilometers could survive. A plan to slay the demon was then devised. The queen, holding a white crystal staff in her hand, led 180 elite warriors into ambush around the monster's cave. They used a small merperson as bait, after first scattering a lethal food prepared by the queen herself. When the serpent fell into the trap and its nervous system became paralyzed, the queen used a stream of blue jade energy from her staff to lock down its magic, creating the opportunity for the warriors to launch hundreds of poisonous spiked shields and finish the beast. In the end, the soul of the serpent was permanently sealed by the murking within its own skeleton at the deepest bottom of the Arctic Ocean. That murking, after nearly 7,000 years of cultivation beneath the sea, was finally summoned by the divine. He was shown that his mission was not yet complete, and that he must be reincarnated into the human world to begin a new cycle of existence, perhaps to help humanity reconnect with the spiritual values it has lost. Today, according to what the third eye has seen, more than 8,000 merpeople are still living quietly in the depths of the Atlantic Ocean and the seas around Australia. They are a unique order of life, having passed through hundreds of millions of years of change under the guidance of the divine. They are not a myth. They are a living reality existing alongside us, protecting the balance of the oceans and waiting for the moment when humanity becomes awake enough to recognize their presence. This story reminds us of one thing: the ocean contains more than water and fish. It also holds a sacred history that our mortal eyes so often fail to notice. The existence of merpeople is proof that life will always seek transcendence, whether on the summit of a high mountain or in the darkest abyss of this planet. But do not be too quick to assume that the mysteries of the earth belong only to giant beings who shook the wilderness, or to supernatural entities beneath the deepest floor of the ocean. Because the moment we think we have understood the limits of life itself, the third eye turns once again and leads us into a dimension that lies beyond every logical law of modern biology. Hold your breath and narrow your gaze, passing through leaf gaps, rock crevices, and the veils of mist hanging over primeval forests untouched by human footsteps. There, hidden beneath the shell of the world we have long believed we control, is a proud, tiny civilization, filled with courageous warriors and survival laws so severe they leave you breathless. Are you ready to face a reality in which a single blade of grass stands like a towering tree, and a single drop of dew can become a vast ocean? Prepare yourself to step through the invisible gate and enter the world of tiny inhabitants who carry shocking spiritual power within them. The mystery of the miniature kingdom. So in the end, do tiny people truly exist in this world? Or are they nothing more than imagined lines from Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift? In truth, if we turn back the oldest pages of Eastern history, we are stunned to realize that there was once an age when little people giants and modern humans coexisted together as diverse pieces of creation. In the legendary ancient text, Shanhai Jing, the records of tiny kingdoms appear in extraordinary detail and with vivid clarity, nothing like simple fiction. In a desolate place beyond the Eastern Sea, people spoke of the kingdom of the tiny people, where beings lived who stood only 9 kun tall, meaning less than 10 centimeters. More than that, in the kingdom of Jiao Yao, or the kingdom of Zhu Niao, these little inhabitants did more than simply exist. They built astonishingly civilized societies. They lived in mountain caves for protection against the dangers of nature. Yet they wore clothing and hats with proper care, cultivated grains, and possessed a refined intelligence that allowed them to create tools and objects worthy of admiration, even from ordinary human beings. Their existence is further reinforced by records found in the records of the Grand Historian and the Book of Wei, which describe tiny kingdoms where the people stood only 3 to 4 chi tall, yet possessed extraordinary lifespans, such as the land of Tuo Yi, where it was said that people could live for 10,000 years. and yet their lives were an epic of harsh survival. Because their bodies were so small, every farming season became a life and death struggle as they had to guard against flocks of pecking birds. In the land of the cranes, for example, little people only 7 can tall constantly lived under the threat of being swallowed by sea cranes. That helps explain why they often chose to live hidden in caves or in the wild lands of the Northwest, wearing vermilion red clothing and crowns as symbols of dignity and protection. The existence of these tiny neighbors did not remain only in the bamboo slips of the East. It forms a shocking thread connecting civilizations across the world. And when we step outside the world of legend, physical evidence, and modern archaeological reports have begun to reveal a reality that mainstream science once tried to ignore. On the remote island of Flores in Indonesia in the year 2003, archaeologists were shaken when they uncovered the skeletal remains of a human species standing only 1.06 meters tall and weighing about 25 kilograms later, named Homo floresiensis. It is clear that this being had a stature remarkably similar to Tolkien's imagined hobbit. The most controversial point, and also the strongest piece of evidence, is the brain. Although the brain was only about 1/3 the size of a modern human brain, around 400 cubic centimeters, the evidence at the site showed that they were skilled hunters. They knew how to craft refined stone tools in order to hunt dwarf stegodon, and they knew how to use fire to cook their food. That overturned the old belief that intelligence rises only in direct proportion to brain size. And this was not a single diseased individual, but an entire population that truly existed. What makes the hypothesis of a miniature kingdom so logical is the timeline itself. The most recent studies suggest that the Flores hobbit survived until as recently as 12,000 to 50,000 years ago. That means they lived alongside the ancestors of our own species Homo sapiens for tens of thousands of years. Their disappearance remains a major mystery, but many researchers believe that a catastrophic volcanic eruption on the island of Flores wiped out that community. And yet, in the memory of the native people of Central Flores, stories still survive about a small hairy race called Ebugogo. The correspondence between local legend and archaeological discovery suggests that these tiny neighbors truly once walked on the same ground as we do. And the discovery on Flores stands as a direct challenge to the theory of one-directional human evolution, showing that the Earth was once a shared home for many kinds of human beings of different sizes. And it did not happen only in Indonesia. Similar traces have appeared in many other places across the world. In South Africa, paleoanthropologist Lee Berger found the skeletons of Homo naledi in the Rising Star cave system. Although they were not as tiny as the Flores people, they possessed a small stature and a body structure combining both primitive and modern human traits. And they lived in cramped spaces that ordinary people could barely squeeze through. And that is not the end of it. In the states of Ohio and Mississippi, in the United States, ancient graves excavated during the 19th century revealed multiple tiny skeletons buried with great reverence in quartz stone coffins. These skeletons had the complete adult teeth of human beings, yet stood only 30 to 50 centimeters tall. In the steep mountains of northeastern Mexico, people also found caves containing hundreds of tiny houses whose doorways and windows were only large enough for a human hand to pass through. These structures were so refined that they could never have been the product of nature or the dens of animals. They were the remains of a miniature city where a tiny community once lived and hid from enormous wild beasts. The strange consistency across civilizations, separated by tens of thousands of miles, is also a logical argument that cannot be ignored. While the Chinese spoke of the kingdom of Zhu Niao, the indigenous peoples of the Americas, especially the Cherokee, passed down vivid memories of the Yunwi Tsunsti little beings with magical powers who lived deep in the forest and often helped humans when they became lost. In Europe, stories of leprechauns in Ireland or gnomes in Northern Europe have long been treated as fairy tales. Yet in truth, they share astonishingly similar traits with the descriptions found in the Shanhai Jing. They are intelligent, skilled in metalworking, and exceptionally gifted at hiding themselves. Why is it that every civilization from Asia to Europe, from Africa to the Americas, tells the same story about little people who knew how to farm and weave cloth? If it were all only illusion, why would those stories appear with such consistency in both physical form and social behavior? Perhaps like the giants, the little people chose to withdraw into the cracks of reality regions of space, vibrating at different frequencies that the ordinary human eye cannot receive. They are still there beneath rotting leaves or in the dark hollows of stone, quietly maintaining their pure civilization while observing the noise of us, the modern giants. Their existence is a reminder that the universe is layered and far richer than anything we can see with our limited physical eyes. The existence of these tiny neighbors is not limited to ancient Eastern texts or remote islands in Indonesia. It is also a powerful spiritual thread connecting continents across the world. Especially in the Americas, belief in these beings is so strong and so alive that we can no longer treat it as nothing more than children's fairy tales. The existence of tiny spirit beings in the Americas. If you have ever seen the documentary Little People, Big Faith, you will have encountered an entirely different reality surrounding the Eskasoni people. The Eskasoni insist that little people have lived in the hills of Nova Scotia for many centuries. Their influence is so strong that villagers have always warned children to stay away from the mountains out of fear that these beings might carry them off. And the stories of the Eskasoni are far from isolated. Most indigenous peoples in the United States and Canada share a similar belief. They speak of little people, and each tribe approaches them in its own way with both reverence and fear. It is difficult to dismiss this pattern when we look at the Shoshone tribe in Mexico. They called the tiny race living in the Rocky Mountains and the Pedro Mountains the Naimurigar. According to legend, the Naimurigar defended their territory with extreme vigilance, using poisoned arrows. The realism of that story reached a dramatic point when an actual tiny mummy was reportedly found in the San Pedro Mountains, a physical piece of evidence that forced researchers to seriously consider the possible existence of the very race the Shoshone had believed in for generations. Beyond the mainland, on the beautiful island of Hawaii in the middle of the Pacific, the native people also revere a race of little beings called the Menehune. According to tradition, they were the first inhabitants of the islands long before the Polynesians arrived to settle there. Great constructions such as the Menehune Fish Pond at Niumalu and the Kikiaola Ditch are said to be the megalithic legacy left behind by this tiny people. Deep inland, the Choctaw tribe passed down stories of the Quanokasha beings who stood only about 1 to 2 feet tall. The Choctaw regarded them as sacred, yet frightening beings. Legend says that the Quanokasha would take young boys into caves to test their destiny. The child would be made to choose among a knife, a pouch of poisonous herbs, and a pouch of healing herbs. That choice would determine the child's future. Whether he would become a killer, a poor healer, or a great physician who saved lives. The striking similarity between the traditions of Hawaii, the Shoshone, and the Choctaw lies in the belief that little people always chose caves and untouched forests as their dwelling places, completely separate from the human world. In the eyes of the Cherokee, the world of little people was clearly divided into 3 kinds, each with its own character. There were the rock people who were cruel and known for kidnapping children. The Laurel people, who were friendly but mischievous, always playing tricks to keep the human spirit youthful. And finally, the Dogwood people, who were kind-hearted and cared for the giants, meaning us whenever necessary. Meanwhile, the Crow tribe remained grateful to the Narumbi, who lived in the Pryor Mountains. It was these tiny beings who helped Chief Plenty Coups gain the strategic vision needed to keep his people united and safe at the beginning of the 20th century. Even to this day, many Crow people passing through Pryor Gap still leave offerings in reverence, honoring the help once given by those little benefactors. Modern encounters when magic still remains. So the question is this: why do we doubt these traditions when they repeat themselves across every culture, from the ancient Celts of Europe to the indigenous peoples of the Americas? Perhaps the little fairies of Ireland and the tiny people of America were in fact the same race, a people possessing deep knowledge of magic and healing. In truth, encounters with these fair folk are not confined to the distant past. Even in the outskirts of Tampa Bay, Florida, and in first-hand accounts shared in the film Fairy Faith, many people claim to have witnessed their presence with their own eyes. One woman recalled that when she was a child, she saw a group of little people dancing joyfully in the woods while on an outing with her mother. Another story described tiny winged beings dancing merrily on a toy shelf early one morning. Are they flesh and blood beings, or are they transcendent spiritual entities? We may never find the final answer, and perhaps that is a blessing in itself. In a society where everything is dissected, analyzed, and exploited beneath the microscope, allowing the magic of the little people to remain alive in both imagination and spiritual reality may be the only way to preserve their purity. As the author said, I do not need science to prove or disprove their existence, because once we open the third eye, the world is already more radiant and more diverse than any laboratory could ever demonstrate. We have just traveled together through a breathtaking journey from the forbidden secrets in the Book of Enoch about the female Nephilim, the daughters of the Watchers, to the legendary kingdom of Merpeople beneath the ocean floor, and the giant footprints scattered from the Amazon to the Middle East. All of these beings, though different in form and power, are delivering the same message. This world is far greater and far more astonishing than what our physical eyes are able to take in. And yet, why is it that in this brilliant age of information, these truths are still treated as fantasy? The answer lies in the very barrier of human perception. The mindset of "I will only believe what I can see" has quietly become a lock that seals off our ability to perceive and awaken. Rational philosophy defines man as a rational animal. And because we possess reason, we constantly want to place ourselves at the center as the measure of all things. As Protagoras once said, man is the measure of all things. We are confident that through knowledge, we can master our lives and even master the universe itself. But the real question is this: human reason truly without limit? Can we really carry the full weight of life using only the experimental methods of science? Weighing, measuring, counting, and calculating. As modern people living in this age, we have witnessed so many astonishing inventions that we have come to place our full hope in human intelligence. We feel at ease only when the eye can see, the ear can hear, and the hand can touch. And yet the tragedy is this: human beings become so confident in reason that they fail to notice how deeply limited it is. The danger becomes even greater when reason is blinded by desire, selfishness, and controlling ideologies. Have not the greatest minds in history also used their brilliance to create atomic bombs and weapons of mass destruction? Just look up into the night sky. You see thousands of shining stars, but the truth is that those rays of light may have taken millions of light years to reach your eyes. The world that emitted that light may already have died long ago, and what you are seeing may be only a ghost from the past. On the other hand, There are countless worlds forming out there, whose light has not yet reached the earth, which means they are real, and yet you still cannot see them. So if we insist on believing only what we can verify for ourselves, then what in this world would still remain worthy of belief? How could you ever weigh the love of your parents? How could you measure the faithfulness of the person you love so completely that you would never doubt it again? In truth, through a full day of life, we act mostly on what we believe, not on what we know with certainty. Faith does not oppose reason. It is the next step after reason has done all it can, and then humbly admits that there are higher realms the mind cannot reach. Those who demand "I must see before I believe" are in truth becoming slaves to practicality and to the endless demands of limited senses. Human reason can at times be no more than a fragile reed bent by the winds of prejudice and narrow judgment. The light of truth reveals itself not only to those who know how to think with the mind, but also to those who know how to love with the heart, how to behold with the eyes, and how to surrender with humility. To live a truly rich life, we cannot rely on pure analysis alone. There is deep wisdom in the words of Jesus. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. Those who dare to believe are blessed because they step out of the closed circle of limited reason and open their souls to place hope in what lies beyond human control. And when faith is awakened, the living world around you becomes wider and full of meaning. The female Nephilim, the Merpeople and the giants may still be there in a dimension that only those who dare to believe can ever touch. Thank you for walking with us on today's journey in search of truth. Do not forget to keep both your mind and your heart open, because the truth always lies behind the veil of what the eyes see and the ears hear. We will see you again in the next journeys of mystery and discovery.